Tom Clark's 6M podcast is a Boink Studios production. And now, on with the show. Hey, what is up? Welcome to Tom Clark's 6M podcast. I'm your host, Tom Clark, and in this episode I'm joined by co-host Phil Lindsey. From the Star Wars universe comes one of the most popular films of all time, with a ragtag group of misfits who band together on a suicide mission to deliver secret plans to the Rebel Alliance while trying to stay one step ahead of the Empire and the Sith Lord that will do anything to stop them. We're talking about Rogue One. Rogue One is a science fiction action film set in the Star Wars universe and was directed by Gareth Edwards on a screenplay by Chris Weitz and Tony Gilroy. The film was distributed by Disney Studios and was released in the United States on December 16, 2016. Rogue One takes place just before 1977's Star Wars, also known as Episode 4, A New Hope. The movie's action scenes and character depictions were presented with the backdrop of the ongoing war between the Rebel Alliance and the Empire. Edwards wanted to give the feel of a war movie with neither side being completely innocent or blameless during the conflict. Rogue One focuses on Galen Erso, a young rebel who's sent to live with Alliance extremist Saw Gerrera following the murder of her mother. Jen's scientist father, Galen Erso, is forced to work for the Empire as the primary designer behind the original Death Star. He spends the next several years on the project, secretly adding a flaw to the design which will allow the Rebel Alliance to destroy the station. Jen meets and begins working alongside Cassian Andor, a rebel that leads a small team on a mission to steal the Death Star plans. Andor is seconded by K2SO, a former Imperial droid, and the three are joined on the mission by Bodhi Rook, an Imperial defector, as well as Chiru Imwe and Baze Malbus. Also featured in the film are Grand Moff Tarkin, a high-ranking Imperial officer, and Darth Vader, the Sith Lord that becomes the primary antagonist of the original Star Wars trilogy. Fan-favorite characters C-3PO and R2-D2 are also in the film. Rogue One was highly received by fans and critics alike who praised the movie for staying true to the Star Wars mythos while also delivering a new narrative for the story. The movie made over $1 billion worldwide on a budget of $220 million and is the third highest grossing Star Wars film of all time. A prequel spin-off featuring Cassian Andor was announced in 2018 and is set to premiere on the Disney Plus streaming service in 2022. Thanks to the work done by the cast, as well as the interconnecting storytelling and action-packed battle scenes, Rogue One is a favorite of many Star Wars fans. The movie has become an important part of the Star Wars universe and continues to entertain fans all over the world. And that's the lowdown on Rogue One. The idea of prequels in movies is not exactly a new thing. This has been happening for quite some time. And when you say the word prequels, if you are a sci-fi / comic book fan, then to me the word prequel automatically says Star Wars. And maybe it's not like that for everybody, but it is for me. So when I hear the word prequels, I'm automatically thinking about the three movies they did after Jedi, which is supposed to come before Jedi. I got feelings and thoughts on the prequels. I've not made any secret about that. Maybe one day on the 6M we'll cover them because, hey, we're doing all the rest of Star Wars anyway. Why not at some point? Because I don't want to sit through them again. But that's another story for another time. The idea of the prequel here for what we're talking about today, of course, is Rogue One. I'm a massive Star Wars guy, have been since I was a kid. I saw all three of the original trilogy in the theaters. So, yes, I go way back with this universe. Rogue One, when this thing was first announced, I had my doubts because obviously anytime you try to retrofit anything, as they did with the prequels, there's all sorts of questions. There's all sorts of comments. There's all sorts of commentary that can be had. And you're either going to make everybody happy or you're going to make nobody happy. So again, I had, cautious optimism, fingers crossed for Rogue One. Phil, I must tell you as we begin here today that after not watching this movie, I think since when it was first released, and I watched it when it came out again on DVD or digital download, whatever it was at the time, I think this is the most I've ever enjoyed this film. And for me, it might be top 5, one of my best Star Wars movies, one of my favorite Star Wars films. As we get into this, What's your thoughts on watching this film again after how? I mean, how long has it been since you had seen it before?
I haven't seen it since probably since I went to see it in the theater when it debuted.
Hmm.
I think it's held up really well. Um, I think it's not only one of the best prequels, one of the best, Star Wars movies since the Disney acquisition. I agree with you. I think it's one of the best Star Wars movies there is. I think it's firmly within my top five.
It's so good, man. And honestly, I think unlike other movies that we've seen where they have tried to, dude, it's like working a jigsaw puzzle and the piece you have won't fit, but it's like 1 centimeter away from fitting. You're like, how does this not fit? And like they're taking scissors to it to make it fit at some parts. And I'm like, but it's kind of right, but it's kind of not right. I get very little of that with this movie. I'm not saying it's a perfect film. I'm not going to say that. Maybe some people would have that opinion. There's some tremendous acting in this film that I so want to get to. But dude, this one doesn't feel as forced to me. Is that what you took from it?
I think that they have a really good story here. I think it also helps that they have a great cast. Um, and I think there's something to being able to go in and do a one and done and not having to try and stretch your story out over three movies.
Mhm.
And I think that's part of why this movie is in some ways so satisfying.
They got one at bat. That's all they got. Because in watching this movie again and making notes on it, there was a question. I don't know. Someone is like, "Is there going to be a Rogue 2?" I'm like, "What? How could there be a Rogue 2? Like,
Right, with who?
with who? How? Rogue 2 is a New Hope, right? I mean, you could say Episode 4, A New Hope, is Rogue 2. I don't know. Like, yeah, and I've done the thing. I've done the Marvel watch through. Now I haven't done the Marvel watch through with the Disney Plus series fit in and with Black Widow fit in yet. And maybe one day I'll set aside enough time out of my life to do all that. Um, but I have done the basic movie watch through a couple of different times. I've not done the entire Star Wars watch through, but I did after wrapping up Rogue One. I did immediately go to the beginning of A New Hope. Have you done that yet?
I haven't. I haven't tried to watch them back to back. But I do like how seamlessly this movie kind of goes into the stuff that we know happens in New Hope.
Yeah. It so does, by the way, dude. It's actually pretty freaking seamless. James Earl Jones' voice is going to be different, obviously, because he's much older when Rogue One happened. But yeah, he's. I mean, the suit's right, the mask is right, the eyes are right, everything's perfect. They matched everything up to Episode 4, which is freaking great, dude. I love the idea, as you said. This is a self-contained story. So one time at bat, and they're done. You only got three swings. You gotta. This is it. You don't get to come back in the rotation later. Dude, this movie, and 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 like in the course of the story, the characters don't know this. I don't think they know it till the end. This entire mission is a suicide mission. It's crazy. It's like, what's the movie I'm thinking of? The Dirty Dozen, I think. Like it's a flat out suicide mission. Let's talk about the cast, man. Is this one of the best casts ever assembled for a Star Wars film?
For sure. It's definitely one of the most diverse and versatile casts I've ever seen in any Star Wars movie. I mean, when they announced the cast and I saw a lot of those names attached to it, um, I was already interested.
Yeah, there's no one to dislike here. Now, I can't speak for all of Star Wars fandom because there's some wackadoodle people out there who happen to hate Rose Tico and all these other people because, hey, that person's a girl. I want to hate her. So, uh, I'm not those wackies. So, no, I don't have a problem with anybody in this cast. I think everybody is, dude, I don't think I had one moment of feeling like, well, this person's miscast. I personally didn't get that at all through this whole movie. Did you? That's good stuff. Okay, so let's talk about the lead. Let's talk about Jen Erso, Felicity Jones. Um, I think one of the first things I saw about her when I started seeing photos of like the costuming and stuff, and when the trailer first broke, I thought, isn't it interesting that she's kind of similar to Ray in terms of stature, hair color? Not for nothing, not like it's a big deal, but it was kind of interesting to me. I wonder if any of that at all is meant to connect in some small way, sort of like a harmonizing of, if not for this, for her, if not for her, the Star Wars plans don't, or the, excuse me, the Death Star plans don't get into the hands of the rebels. And by the way, she's a little similar to Ray. I wonder if that's just happy coincidence, or what do you think about Felicity Jones as Jen Erso?
Um, I think that it's a lot of it is happy coincidence.
Hmm.
Um, I know that when the first movie was first announced and people noticed the similarities, they were wondering if Rogue One was going to tie to Force Awakens, and we were going to find out that she was Rey's parent, which would seem like it would have been impossible to line up.
Yeah, yeah.
But there were some people trying to, make their fan theories that that was that, and um, I'm glad they didn't go that route. um, but I just think she's such an interesting character in her own right. There's so much you can do with the storyline of having a bad upbringing but still being willing to do the right thing. That's just such a relatable plot. Um, and so I almost think they did it. Well, not almost. I think they did do it better with Jen than they did it with Ray. I think they did a better job of showing us where she came from, and then also showing us why the mission meant everything to her.
She is fully fleshed out and fully realized and fully conceptualized, whereas Ray, it felt like they were writing that stuff as they went along.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that. It totally makes sense. And I love your point earlier about, again, it's self-contained. It's not going to be done over the course of three movies, because over the course of three movies, there's two options. You're either going to get it right or you're going to get it wrong. So they got it right with this film. So there wasn't a lot of time to screw it up or to even make it better. So it probably could have went either way. But
Yeah.
man, she is a very compelling character, isn't she?
Yeah, and I mean, there's only one voice behind Jin here as well. It's not like Jin was in several hands before we
Mm,
got to the finish line,
yeah,
and I mean that also was to Ray's detriment in some ways.
yeah. God, yeah, I feel that. Yeah, for sure. Um, let's see. We also had to talk about Diego Luna because, like it or not, kids, in the Star Wars universe, you need the heroine who could be the star, perfectly fine, but you need a cowboy. So it's like the old tropes, Phil, of the original Star Wars universe. Is you need the princess, the cowboy, the wizard, the dreamer. It's I don't know if we're fulfilling all the roles here, but Cassian Andor may be one of the best Han Solos without it being Han Solo. And, all due respect to Poe Dameron, who's freaking great. But man, Diego Luna is Cassian Andor. What do you think about this character? And what do you think about Diego's performance?
First of all, I think it's hilarious that Diego Luna sounds like a Star Wars character name.
Yes. Oh my God, it so does.
I think that is hilarious. Almost even more than his actual character name in the movie. But I like this character. There's a lot to like about him. I can definitely see the comparisons to Poe and Han. Um, but yeah, I thought he was a great character.
This is a bad guy too, man. This is not a like you kind of got the feeling in New Hope that Han might have been a bad guy, but you never really saw him heal out very much. I don't think Poe ever healed out. Man, Cassian flat out heals out in this movie a couple of times. And you're like, this is a bad guy. This to me, and we'll get more into it as we get into the story here, but one of the comments I'll make right off the bat here, Phil, is that this is, I think, maybe the first movie for me that made the Rebel Alliance feel real. It didn't make it feel as sort of a romanticized idea of it's us against them. We're the underdogs. We're fighting for freedom and peace for the galaxy. No, this is men and women who will do whatever it takes, even if it means we make the tough choices. I mean, dude, I totally get that with Cassian Andor. And again, for me, it's the first time I think I've really realized that for this universe.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the great things about Rebel One as a whole. I think Rebel One is the first time where, outside of us seeing like, hey, it's dog fights and lightsaber fights and all this other stuff, all this super fantastical stuff, and we get kind of distracted from the fact that this is a war. And I
Mhm.
feel like Rogue One very much grounds the plot of the original movies and goes like, no, there are kind of no good guys and bad guys on both sides of this thing. It's war. People are just doing whatever it takes to win.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, I think it brought it home and it lets you know these are the good guys, but you don't know where they come from. That there's a lot of bad stories happening to good people, and sometimes those people have to cross the line to get what they want, what they need.
Mm,
Um,
yeah. And maybe a better way to phrase that than to say that there are no good guys or bad guys. I feel like war corrupts everyone.
mm,
War will make people do unsavory things that they might not have done just for the sake of winning. And I mean, you could go all the way back to the prequel trilogy and what war did to the Jedi Council and how that led to their eventual demise.
very true. Yeah, very true. The arrogance of the Jedi Council, and they refused to train Anakin, and it's all this superstitious stuff. And it was, yeah. I mean, pretty much as you have opined before, and I agree with you that they basically created Vader without knowing they did it.
Yeah.
So,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, and I mean, just falling into the Emperor's trap and going from, peacekeepers and a council that want to negotiate and now, going out and straight up putting on armor and leading troops into battle is just not what the Jedi were supposed to be meant to do.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. Well, speaking of bad guys, we got to talk about Orson Krennic, played by the great Ben Mendelsohn, who is he's a Marvel guy also. So we cross worlds here a few different times in this movie, actually, a few different times from Marvel, which is pretty freaking cool. Orson Krennic, in the grand scheme of things, and this feels like a last word, Phil moment, but I don't mean it to be. In the grand scheme of things, how do you think Orson Krennic holds up to the other big bads we have seen in the Star Wars universe thus far?
I loved Orson in this movie, man. With the big long white cape and like his I just think he's great, man. I think he nails being a very bad guy, but also being sniveling enough in comparison to other big bads that he's on the same side with. He's kind of like Starscream. Kind of how I see it. He's like Starscream.
Oh, that's great. You dare interrupt my coronation? And he says, Coronation, Starscream, this is bad comedy. That's great stuff. That's a great comparison, man. I totally get that. He's a pawn and he doesn't know it, but he's being used from the jump, it feels like here, isn't he?
Yes, he's very much being used. And again, that's the beauty of Rogue One is that it it there's so many complexities and so many nuances to going to war. Like everybody thinks that this conflict is all about them, but in some ways it's so much bigger than them and they don't realize it.
Yeah, they're because they know what they see, but there's a lot that they can't see or don't see, and so that doesn't factor into their thought process. Yeah, that's I like again, like you said, they're at war. So the theater of war is I see the battlefield. I've been briefed, but we don't know about what they're getting briefed on. The people we're getting ready to go fight. So you don't know what they know either. So yeah, it's out of the realm of possibility to know everything, of course, but Yeah, I love that. The idea that it's bigger than any of these people could possibly realize. And to go back to Andor, he might be the one that understands maybe more than anyone, with the exception of Jen, just how big this thing is. Because man, we never really got um like a full explanation as to Cassian's background, did we? We never got a really or like a real origin story in this movie, did we?
No, I mean, I think most of the origin stuff is left to Jen, so we don't get
Hmm.
a backstory on most of the other characters.
Well, we're gonna get it on the Disney Plus series because Cassian Andor is coming back. So,
Oh, really?
oh yeah,
I didn't know that.
yeah, he's gonna get his own series. I don't know if it's in the works right now, but I know for sure it was on the slate. So, we will see what happens. Of course, to be fair, several months ago they had a litany of Star Wars projects uh, on the slate, and then like one by one they were put in hiatus or canceled altogether. I don't think his is one of them. In fact, let's see. Yes, Andor is being filmed. The pandemic obviously has had given them some issues. Mon Mothma will be in the series. You know, and dude, we could talk about this anytime, but the idea of, hey, we're getting ready to watch a movie with a bunch of dead people in it, and don't get too attached, kids, because you're not going to see them again. It's kind of like the same thing with the Cassian Andor series. It's like it's not that I couldn't enjoy it, but I already know how the story ends for him. I don't know. You got to think, man, they're going to make this thing worth watching and make him even more, you know, compelling and intriguing they did in this movie. I would think, right?
It depends on what it is, because I mean, I am a big Sopranos fan. I've rewatched the series several times. Matter of fact, I am currently binge watching it again.
Hmm.
And I don't care how many times I've watched it. You kind of know that Tony is going to die by the end of the series. There's only one way for this to end for him. Either he's going to die or he's going to end up in jail. And so basically knowing his fate doesn't make it any less interesting.
Have you seen the prequel to that, by the way?
Yes,
How is it?
I like it. I have mixed feelings on it. But I think as a big Sopranos fan, I enjoy it. I mean, I enjoyed it so much that it has got me binge watching the show again. So, um,
Ah,
no, I like it. I don't think it's gonna be something for everyone. If you're not like a Sopranos super fan, you might not enjoy it as much. If
mhm,
you're expecting it to be a movie about Tony, you might not enjoy it. But I think there are good things there.
right. Um, well, we talked about Jen, and there's a lot to talk about with this character because she is our way in. She is the one that we kind of sit on her shoulder. But the story begins with her and her father, Galen Erso, played by Mads Mikkelsen. And man, this guy, he doesn't even need to speak. If he had a movie with no dialogue, it'd be fine. You just put his face on camera, and I swear to God, what's the word? Emote. Holy God, dude, this guy to be. I mean, every actor should be so lucky that they have this face where he doesn't have to say a word, but you feel it down to your core. Man, this guy is freaking great as Galen Erso in this film.
Um, yeah, I really like Mads as an actor. Um, he's one of those guys that I think that Marvel kind of underused. And don't get me wrong, I think that he's good in the Doctor Strange movie, but I think there's so much more they could have done with him because he's such a good
Mhm.
actor. And I mean, we don't see a whole heck of a lot of him in this movie, but he's great in the stuff that he does do.
Yeah, and it's like this guy's working for the Empire, but he obviously didn't want anything to do with it, so he got away to raise his family. That right there is, and Finn's story is compelling on its own. But to me, from where I'm sitting, because I am a family guy with a kid at home, but like this idea of I'm getting away because I'm going to raise my kid. I don't want her to see this. I don't want any part of this. I got to get out now. This is I'm done. I'm over this. To me, if I do a compare and contrast, if I had to, I would say his story might be a little bit more I don't know, deeply rooted than just, well, I don't want to be a stormtrooper anymore. And again, it, that character is not written fantastic, as we both know. I mean, there was a lot of potential there, kids, that kind of got blown. So it's no disrespect to anybody at all. It's just from where I'm sitting, this is a much more compelling story than maybe what we got in Force Awakens with Finn.
I would say so. I think that there are complexities to Finn's character that are there that are never fully fleshed out.
Hmm.
Um, and I feel like just getting all of Gale's story here, and again, because it's just self-contained, I think that um, it's hard to pick it apart because we got a very definitive starting point and we got a very definitive ending to it.
Yeah, yeah, no doubt about it. And again, dude, like you said, they have the benefit of, you know, um, chapter one to the end of the book here for this entire movie. So that's a good thing for the story and for everybody involved. Um, well, we'll finish up the cast here before we really start talking about this. The pairing of Donnie Yen as Chira Imwe and Zhang Wen as Baze Malbus. From a distance, these two guys don't look like sidekicks, but man, this is a very interesting pair. I am totally dialed in to Imwe. Uh, of all the people that maybe could have lived through this thing, I wish it had been him because he's freaking great. And to pair them together, the idea that Malbus is sort of watching over him and Emily keeps getting him in trouble. He's like, oh God, here we go again, kind of deal. But he loves the guy like a brother and he's always got his back. Man, this pairing is one of the most entertaining parts of this movie are these two guys together.
Um, yeah, I'm a big fan of Donnie Yen. I just am. I mean, all of the Ip Man movies, all of his stuff that he's done outside of America. I'm a big fan of kung fu movies. And
Mhm.
so when I saw he was attached to this thing, I was like, "Oh man, I have to see it now." So um, I wasn't surprised that he's my favorite character in the movie. He's just so cool. He just is. He's so cool without any of the trappings of the character alone. Just the fact that Donnie Yen is in a Star Wars movie is cool. Um, and so everything that he does in the movie is great. I mean his ongoing mantra is fantastic. The I am one with the force is with me. um the fact that he is basically a blind swordsman, which is it's just a cool Japanese trope. um it's a cool samurai trope, and so to see them use that in the Star Wars universe was also really cool. And I agree, his relationship with Baze is one of the more interesting things in the story. I mean, in the movie.
Yeah, it's good stuff. And supposedly the Guardian of the Wheels goes all the way back to George Lucas's first notes when he began writing Star Wars as a story, was that the story was going to be told from the perspective of the Wills. And it was like these higher powers, they were the ones who were going to be telling the story of Star Wars, of Luke and whatever characters he was coming up with at the time. But then the Wills, slowly but surely through the course of writing the story, the Wills became the Force. So they incorporated that whole idea. And supposedly this may be one of the very first things written down about this entire Star Wars universe that they incorporated into this film, which again, I love that. And it's like the idea of fan service, but deeper than fan service, it's service to the story of the exact origins of what this thing was supposed to be to begin with. We got a taste of that in the second trilogy, or the sequel trilogy, because Star Killer Base, Star Killer was Luke's original last name in Lucas's story. So there's some callbacks there as well. But man, this Guardians of the Will stuff, man. I don't know if you're into the Star Wars animation because I don't get into a whole lot. No, no, not for any particular reason. Have they explored the Guardians of the Wills at any point after this film?
I don't watch a lot of the animated stuff, so I'm not sure. Um, yeah, I'm not sure.
It's I can't really find a whole lot about it. I wouldn't be surprised if they do approach it at some point. down the road. I mean, why not use it? We've also got Riz Ahmed as Bodhi Rook, who you're going to love this guy because I got one hang up about him, and I don't even know why I have it. And I have, like I said, I just rewatched the film yesterday. In fact, do we get an explanation as to why he left the Empire? Because I'm blanking on that right now. Um, what was his reason for leaving?
I don't know if we get an explanation. Uh, yeah, I think you're right because I'm trying to think. I don't know if we got one.
I mean, other than he and Galen are friendly, and Galen he became an ally, I suppose. And I guess they both had problems with what they were doing. I mean, I don't know. I love the character, and he's great. I just kept waiting for, okay, what's the backstory? And I never really got it. But he, along with another character, are really the comic relief in this, which I'm totally fine with because I love the idea of this character anyway. What do you think about Ahmed as Bodhi Rook?
Um, I really like it. I really like him. I think Riz Ahmed is a good actor.
Mhm.
I've liked him in other movies. And I think he was great here. Yeah, I the only things like you said, I'm blanking on do we have a real reason for him to leave the Empire? But again, I think once we get into complexities of war, and it might be just as simple as he just has seen so much being a part of the Empire that he just didn't want to do it anymore.
Mhm. Well, I mean, that'll have to be good enough. I mean, honestly, that is good enough. It's just, I guess in this universe, we're so used to having backstories and reasons and character motivations. Not all the time, kids. Spoiler alert: we don't get it a whole lot in the second sequel trilogy, but it is what it is. Um, let's see. We also have Forrest Whitaker as Saul Guerrera. You can make any commentary on any Forrest Whitaker role in any movie, and you're kind of wasting your time because he's so good. I don't know if you could just put words to what the guy does. It kind of feels like he just shows up and, oh, what am I today? Cool, action. And he's got it. He's nailed it. He did it in Black Panther. He does it here. I mean, I wasn't familiar with this character because I'm not a Clone Wars guy, but from what I've heard and read was that he nailed it. So, Forrest Whitaker as Saul Guerrera. How important is this character to this movie?
Well, I just think getting a guy with the resume of Forrest Whitaker on this movie does a lot to strengthen the cast for one
Mhm.
thing, but then but also I just think he's just a great actor, and like you said, every time he brings something to the role, it's not like you never feel like he's phoning it in.
No.
You always feel like he's giving you his all, and I feel like he does the same thing here. I think he's a great character, but I also think that if he wasn't such a good actor, some of the stuff with him might have fallen flat.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I kind of wish we'd gotten more of him. We never find out why he needs, like, I guess it's a built in respirator, oxygen tank that's on his suit. We never figure that out. We just had to piece it together and understand this guy is more than just a rebel. I mean, this guy is like, there's hardcore matches and then there's New Jack. And I kind of feel like you don't want to know what I've done. I've done some bad stuff kind of guy. All in the name of we got to take down the Empire. But if there's any guys in this movie who have done stuff maybe they regret, besides Cassian Andor, it's got to be Saul Guerrero, man. Like he's seen the worst of it and lived to talk about it. So by the time he meets his demise, he can't. Not that he can't wait, but he's ready for it because he's seen enough. I mean, everything I just described, you just see that on his face in this movie because he can just do anything, and he's so good. Um, did we get enough of the relationship between him and Jen, you think? Did we get enough of them on screen together?
Uh, I think we get kind of just enough to get the basis of what their relationship is. Um, I think the the whole thing with this movie is leaving us wanting more. That's the entire purpose of this movie. Like in some ways, it's like there's always parts of it where it's like, oh well, I want more. I mean, even with the stuff with Sharu, it's like I want more of these two characters, and so I think you could always put that on any part of the movie. Like maybe we could have gotten another hour of this, but I think that is kind of the joy and the heartbreaking nature of this movie. Is it sets up all these characters and basically puts them in a place where we know we're not going to see them again.
Oh man, yeah, no kidding. Good point. Rounding out the main cast here, folks, is another man who can do no wrong. And all we got was his voice, but it's plenty enough for me. And we've talked about him here on the 6M before. As K2SO, Alan Tudyk. Dude, Alan Tudyk can do anything, and I'm going to watch it. Because he's so good, and he's so talented. And his job was to get a CG character over. Now, I don't know if K2 is entire CG. I would guess and say that for some up-close shots, they actually built a physical prop, maybe, is my guess, because it looks real world in a lot of shots. But his job is to get this thing over and make you maybe not really care about it, but believe it's real. And dude, he is... I gush about this whole cast, man. I just love Alan Tudyk. He's so good in this. He's the only guy that could have done this voice for me. I think he's fantastic in this movie.
Yeah, I love Alan Tudyk. I think K2S is probably one of my favorite droids. He's just so great. I mean, looking at how he's managed to, repurpose. They managed to repurpose a battle droid. Isn't that what he was?
Yes. He was an Imperial droid. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, just having that as part of his backstory makes him a perfect addition to this crew. Yeah, he's so good in this movie.
Yeah, it's a shame Suicide Squad was copyrighted because, man, that's kind of what we have here. And he, like you said, he fits in perfect. This movie does fit in. By the way, if you never watched it, we're going to spoil the life out of this thing for you. If you didn't know, everyone's dead in the end. So, well, at least 99.9% of them are dead in the end. So there you go. So they did do the best they could to fit this thing into continuity and to make it fit into A New Hope. And it does fit in a lot of ways, which is good for a long time old school fans like myself and for fans who are just coming on board. It does fit, but there are other things that make it a little bit different. So we see as this movie comes on, Phil, it does begin with a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. But then, bam, we're off to the races and we get a shot of space. There's no crawl. Did you know beforehand that there was no opening crawl to this film?
Yeah, I guess I did notice that. It does start with some of the stuff we know about Star Wars movies, but it doesn't have a crawl. You're right.
Yeah, and no title. We don't get the title very from the jump either. Of course, again, folks, if you've seen this, you know how this thing begins. We get to meet the Ersos right off the bat. We see Krennic who shows up. And basically, Krennic wants to take Galen Erso back. And we come to find out in short order that Galen Erso is the architect of the Death Star. I mean, he's the guy. He's the one that we have to thank for the first Death Star. And the fact that, as we'll learn later, dude, that one of the funny bits about Episode 4 that I think a lot of people had a hang up about was how could the Imperials be so incredibly smart, but they have there's this one weakness in the station. And by the way, dude, not for nothing, that station, they built it again with the same weakness. Doesn't it have the same... You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
How did they not learn from the first one? Has that ever been explained?
No. They essentially tried to give us a mulligan here in Rogue One of why that exists.
Right.
But yeah, that is very funny.
Yeah, I just don't know how they don't get it. But I do love the idea that, hey, we're going to explain this weakness. We're finally going to make fans happy and say, look, this wasn't an accident. This was built into the station by this guy who wanted no part of it to begin with, which I think is absolutely brilliant. That's one of the best retrofits of anything I've ever heard of in any universe, not just Star Wars universe, because it makes a lot of other stuff make so much sense. And I think it's perfect. But we get our first look at the Ursos here. We get our first look at Orson Krennic. We get to see Lyra, who is Jen's mother, who doesn't last very long. One of the first things we see is Galen calling Jen Stardust. It's his nickname for her, which will come into play later. And dude, this is where we first get, again, our first look at Orson Krennic. And as you said before, one of the best villains. He's so good, but he's smarmy. He's very, Starscream is the best word. I was going to compare it to Seth Rollins in terms of his smarminess and how he's just self-absorbed. But he says, basically Galen tells him he's not coming back. And he's like, you know, he says he's running a farm. He says, a farm, a man of your talents. And like talents is building, it's this destructive world-ending weapon. And he tells her that Lyra is dead. And Krennic says, look, the work is stalled. We need you to come back. He says, I won't do it. And he says, we were on the verge of greatness. We were this close to providing peace and security to the galaxy. And Galen says, you're confusing peace with terror. And Krennic says, well, you have to start somewhere. Which is like as cold-hearted and as detached from the situation as you can possibly get. Basically, Galen tries to blow him off, tells him Lyra's dead, and then she shows up with a blaster. And he says, oh, look, here's Lyra back from the dead. It's a miracle. Which made me laugh. I don't know why, because I know what's going to happen. So basically, they shoot her down. And he tells the Death Troopers. Is this our first look at the Death Troopers in a Star Wars film, or am I forgetting a movie? Because I don't recall.
I know we've seen them in other things,
Mm-hmm.
for sure. But this might be the first time we've seen them in a movie. I'm trying to think. Well,
It
we've
seems their
absolutely
aim is
seen
better.
them. Yeah, I mean, I definitely think one of the things about this movie is if you didn't have any idea of why the Empire was dangerous and why they were the big epic galactic threat, this movie absolutely sells that.
Yeah.
There are so many scenes in this movie where there is just so much tension, and I think it's to the credit of Luke and Obi-Wan and the eventual team of heroes we get that they some way in some ways make it look so easy. And episode 1 and 3, well, episode 5 and 6, um,
Right.
um, that we just don't realize how dangerous the galactic empire are. And like there are several scenes in this movie where they just look outright scary.
Oh, man, they so do. Tarkin especially. Oh, my God. They use Peter Cushing's likeness, not his voice, of course, but his likeness for this film. Dude, before we get too deep in the weeds, this is one of the most controversial things, if there was anything, about this film. Dude, what's your thoughts on using the likeness of a dead actor for this? We got this with Leia at the end. Spoiler alert, kids. What's your take on this, man? Are you okay with it? I mean, what's your thoughts on it?
I'm fine when you use it sparingly. And long as the family and the estate is okay with it, who am I to complain about it? Like if it's done in a distasteful way, then yeah, of course, I don't think we should be doing that. But I think just using him in small parts in this movie, there's nothing wrong with that. Same thing with the Leia thing. I don't think that there's anything wrong with just using her likeness. Yeah, I mean, as long as they don't have her doing anything crazy.
Yeah, I agree with that. I've been like that with these kind of things from day one. If the family's okay, if the estate's okay, why do I care?
Yeah.
Yeah, good point. Um, I have to get this line in here because it's freaking great. When he says, uh, uh, they kill Lyra, and he says, uh, they have a child. Find it, not her, but it. Like to me, dude, that was one of my first inclinations. This is a really bad guy. This is as Nazi as they come when he's referring to a child as it. Like, oh man. Talk about setting the tone for this dude right from the jump, right?
I mean, yeah. I mean, if we've watched this guy, do some pretty nasty stuff. I mean, it's likened to Oren Ishii's origin in Kill Bill, and we see
Mm.
this guy kill a kid's parents and do it very ruthlessly. And instead of it turning into a villain origin, we get her turning into like the main protagonist of this movie. Um, and so it's just something about the trope of killing someone's parents in front of them. Just it will never not be devastating to watch because we all
Oh
have
yeah.
parents. We all deeply love our parents. So it just will always be seen as one of the most vile things you can do to anyone.
Oh yeah. Like Joe Chill's a heel for a reason. I mean, killed Batman's, but yeah, like it's never not going to be big. You're right. It's always going to have an impact. That's a good point. So, all right. So again, we get statements here right off the bat. Orson Krennic's a bad dude. Galen Erso wants nothing to do with this, which is why he hid himself and his family. And um, yeah, so we get kind of the whole thing established right from the jump. And what's really cool about this is that again, as far as trying to retrofit, this does have the look to me of A New Hope, where it's tech and everything's high tech, but everything looks old at the same time and worn and rusty. And I kind of feel like they did a great job with the overall look of this film and connecting it to Episode 4. That jumped out at me really from the first scenes of this film, man.
Um, I think one of the big criticisms of the prequel trilogy is everything just looks too shiny. Everything is just too pristine. And I think
Mhm.
one of the things about the original trilogy is that everything kind of has a character to it,
Mhm.
because it's just so it's so imperfect. And I think that that's one of the great things about this movie. You get the same thing when you look at the Guardians movies. By the way, it's that it has like such an interesting color palette because nothing looks pristine.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, good call. And you know me, I'm not going to defend the prequels too much to anybody, but I will defend the prequels to the end with that whole, well, the tech looks too good, dude. In my mind, you can explain that away by saying that when the Empire came into power, everything was corrupted, and there was no maintaining anything. The status quo was destroyed. People gave up. Tech went downhill. I mean, you could always say that, it was like the Great Depression where everything was, it's no longer um, like everything's posh and like parties and glossy and famous and like Hollywood kind of thing. And then the Depression hits and people are poor, they have no money, and they're eking out a living. I don't see any problem with the look of the original or the prequels, man. I think it makes perfect sense in relation to the story.
Yeah, I always thought that was a weird criticism. Not in a sense that the CGI looked too perfect, but them having good tech. The whole purpose of the original trilogies is that it took place in kind of a dystopian future within like that timeline because
Hmm.
of course nobody else in the galaxy would have good technology because the whole point is the empire was keeping everyone down and the rebels were using whatever they could get their hands on just to fight back.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Whatever they could piece together. That's something else that I have to throw this at you, especially when we get the scenes with the rebels where they're disagreeing and they don't even want to go. They want to give up. They don't want to fight. Dude, this very much feels like the original colonies. This feels like the War for Independence, where it's like, how someone explained to me how a bunch of dudes with muskets and no organized army, just no hardly any uniforms, very poor dirt farmers basically defeated the British freaking Empire. How in the world did that happen? How on what planet is that possible? I don't know if I ever compared anything in Star Wars to the Americans versus the Brits, but man, this movie totally started connecting dots for me. Did you get that idea through this at all?
Yeah, I really like the idea that again because we see the rebel with their act together in New Hope. So we kind of get this idea that, this is all just a bunch of great people that want to work together, and all of them have altruistic motives. And that's just not realistic. So this movie, again, it grounds it and goes like, no, the rebels had to get their butts kicked quite a bit before they got it
Yeah.
together.
Yeah. Yeah. No kidding. Yeah. And it's, uh, you don't see the struggles, but you're seeing it here. So yeah, it's laying the backstory very well. One of the things we got to say is that Lyra gives her a necklace, and she pretty much, she wears it for the entire movie. Basically, they entrust her being raised to Saw Gerrera. Galen's taken back with Krennic, and they can't find her. They don't know where she is, and that's going to come into play later in the movie. So basically, when we see Jen as an adult, she is a prisoner. So we don't really know where that's going to go yet. And then we meet Cassian Andor, and as we said, folks, he's not the best guy. He's done things that the character I'm sure is not very proud of. But he's talking to an informant. The informant tells him about Bodhi Rook, a defector from the Empire. The informant is heading back to Jeddah. We hear a lot about Jeddah City in this movie also. Another desert planet. That's it. That's right, kids. Believe it or not, another desert planet. There's a whole bunch of them in this universe. We had another one in Rise of Skywalker, and now I'm blanking on the name of that planet. But man, there's a bunch of them, dude. Tatooine was but one. So, yeah, take that with a grain of salt, folks, however you want to take that. So, this guy's freaking out. Troopers show up, Andor takes them down, and the guy is freaking out. And Cassian shoots him in the alley. And then he has this look on his face like, God, I didn't want to do that kind of thing. And dude, I remember seeing this movie in the theater thinking, this is not exactly Han, where he's lovable and he's charming, but is he going to shoot somebody in cold blood? Well, if he has to, sure. But this guy Andor is fighting for a cause, and man, he's as much take no prisoners as the Empire is. I mean, to me, this establishes him and also tells you right off the bat, this guy's got some layers to his character,
Yeah. Jakku, by the way, that's the desert planet.
That's it.
Um, yeah, I think that this establishes right away. Like, you think this guy is gonna be like this lovable scoundrel because we've seen it so many times. We've seen that archetype, and right away he's just like, nope.
Yep. Yeah, forget that crap. So we finally get to see Jet. And in my notes say, man, this universe is obsessed with desert planets. Because they are. I stick to that. This is where we get to see Bodhi Rook for the first time. He's being held captive, and I guess it's by Saul's men. He wants to go see Gerrera, and he's basically letting it known, are you Saul Gerrera? Are you so? He's like, I'm wasting my time. I need to talk to Saul Gerrera before it's too late. Like he flat out knows, don't waste my time. And they're taken to Wobani. Actually, Wobani, I guess, is the planet that Urso is being held on. It's an Imperial labor camp. And her and the others on this transport, the door's blown off. Rebels storm the transport and they get Jen out. And she goes running. She takes a few of them down. And she goes to run out. We meet K2SO, who basically gives her a choke slam. And dude, the first line out of his mouth is, congratulations, you're being rescued. Please do not resist. That's just freaking great, man. And when we first saw him, I'm like, okay, this is different. This guy isn't exactly C-3PO. Very cool. Our next shot is of Yavin 4. Dude, talk to me about how cool it is that they connected this movie, because they had to, obviously. They connected this movie to Yavin 4, and it looks so good. And we get to see the hangar with the X-Wings and those big long helmets and all the original gear. Dude, this feels like episode 4 to me, big time.
Yeah, I did like that we get a lot of the connections to stuff we already knew. This movie just very much feels like a prologue before the original trilogy.
Yeah, no doubt about it. this is where we get to see Mon Mothma. Now, this actress has played this role before. I think she played Mon in Revenge of the Sith, and I think she also did some of the some animated work as the character. But she, of course, is not the original. Genevieve O'Reilly is the actress in question. But the original actress that played Mon Mothma is Caroline Blackiston. And dude, you talk about two women who could totally be related. I mean, Genevieve O'Reilly looks so good as Mon Mothma. You would swear that it's the original actress and they just did CG and de-aged her like Downey in Iron Man or in Avengers. I mean, dude, it's great how close they look to each other, you know?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it it's very much a striking resemblance because I mean, if you had never seen the original movies and this is like your first foray into Star Wars, you would think like, are these not the same actresses?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Um, so yeah, we see the rebels here. Mon Mothma is there, as we said. Cassian's asking her if she's seen Galen or Saw Gerrera. She tells him, asking Jen, I should say, because they bust Jen out. They take her there to Yavin 4. She tells him that Saul saved her life and raised her, but she doesn't know where he is. So basically, they're just trying to use Jen for information here. And Mon tells her Saul's an extremist. He's been on his own since he broke with the Alliance. Um, but basically, she wants to mend the broken trust. Basically, says they don't have a choice. Cassian tells her that Saul is holding Rook and that Rook was sent by Galen. Andor's mission is to authenticate Rook's story and, if possible, find Galen. They hope Saul will help them locate Galen and return him to the Senate for testimony. And they tell her that she will go free if she goes along. So, usually, Phil, I'll ask you, what do you think about the villain's plan? Does any of this make any sense? What do you think about this initial plan of this is how we get what we want? Because there were parts of this I had to stop and pause and go back to where I'm trying to figure out, okay, why did they want Saul again? Um, did all this make sense to you through the first pass, or did you have to kind of piece it together and figure out what they're trying to do here?
I think it made sense. I think I think in sometimes there's so many characters on screen and there's so many people to introduce and you know keep all of these different plot points together that sometimes it's a little convoluted. But I thought it made sense.
Yeah. So when they finally decide to go, she's going to go with K2 and with Cassian. And we finally get to really hang out with K2SO here. We find his reprogrammed Imperial droid. He flat out tells Jen that her coming along is a bad idea. This guy's not shy at all. But before Cassian can get to the ship, one of the officers stops him and tells him, "Don't worry about what you were told during the briefing. There will be no extraction. You find Galen Erso, you kill him then and there." And I'm like, now this guy has a hidden agenda that no one's going to know about that will come into play later. What about this idea, man, of I don't care what she said. He's too dangerous. If you find him, kill him. I mean, I guess from a distance, the answer is yes, because it's the Empire. Does this make sense to just take this guy out and we don't know his story? Or is it just we can't take the risk, just take him out?
I think on the surface it's just like these are bad guys. It's not like oh
Hmm.
we're not bringing anybody in for question. Just kill them.
Right.
Like I think trying to negotiate with people or trying to interrogate people is very much like a I don't want to say a good guy thing, but it's kind of like a protagonist thing. When you've made it very clear that the Empire are the big bads, I feel like on the surface nobody would look at it like, oh well, why would they just kill him? Of course they would kill him.
Right.
Maybe we thought they would torture him first, but no, just kill him.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we got a lot more than we bargained for. Um, in one of the, and I want to say it wasn't Rise of Skywalker. It was, oh man, I'm blanking on the name of the second film. And we've done the 6M on that too,
The
folks.
Last Jedi.
That's it. We
Um,
got the casino, right, where we found out that the same people who sold to the Empire are also selling to the rebels. So like everybody's just as guilty in some way.
exactly, and I mean, I think that is very much um I think that's a narrative trope for cartoons and sci-fi stuff, where we've always got to get, and not even sci-fi stuff, just narratively, we've always got to get the villain brings in the main protagonist and like hems him up, and then monologues and tortures him, and then he eventually escapes and wins. And
Of
so
course.
when you get the finality of this movie, of it's like, no, don't bring him in, just kill him. I think it again just drives home just how dangerous the Empire is, because we get used to them in the original trilogy doing things like bringing in Leia, or bringing in this person and trying to torture them. So now it's kind of like, oh no, these guys are serious. They mean business.
Yeah, they tortured Chewbacca. They tortured Han. They brought Luke in and didn't touch him. I mean, it's yeah, good point. Like they just want to beat information out of you. So, um, and during the course of the scenes that we're talking about here, and this is very cool. When Cassian gets on the ship, the back and forth between him and K2 is very cool, very very entertaining stuff. And he tells Jen that K2SO says what he wants. It's a byproduct of the reprogramming. Um, Jen has a blaster, and Cassian wants her to give it back, but she won't. She's like, what am I here for? You don't trust me, that kind of thing. K2 says, I would like to. He says, would you like to know the possibility of her using it against you? And I think Cassian says something to the effect of just fly, or let's go. And he goes, it's high. It's very high. So he had to put that in. So right away, we're getting sort of a 3PO vibe where he knows the odds and he's going to start making you nuts with it. Except this guy is he's not as Barney Fife as 3PO is, where he's like neurotic and scared of his own shadow and scared of everything. I mean, this guy's kind of a wise ass a little bit. You know what I mean? We kind of get that right off the bat.
Yeah, I love that K2S is very much like any droid we see, and that everything is very logic based, but then at the same time, he is kind of a jerk too, because
Mm-hmm.
he's a repurposed battle droid.
We go back here to see Saul Guerrero for the first time. He's got Rook. Rook tells him he wasn't captured. He defected. They give him the chip, I guess, or the data, or whatever he's got that has the hologram of Galen Erso, and it says, I had that in my boot, and I snuck this out because he wanted to get it to you. It's really cool, man. Again, we're getting some old school stuff here. TIE fighters. We see the Star Destroyer for the first time in this movie, I think. Big time OG Star Wars moments. We see the Death Star for the first time. They're installing the dish. Krennic is there. We see Governor before he's a Grand Moff, folks. He's just Governor Tarkin. And yes, it's a CG of Peter Cushing. So he's there, and we're getting this back and forth. Tarkin is not happy that Krennic lost Bodhi Rook. The Emperor will tolerate no further delay. Tarkin wants to test fire the weapon. Failure will find you explaining why to a far less patient audience. And Krennic says, I will not fail. So right off the bat, Tarkin, dude, it kind of feels like this guy's not sold on this whole Death Star thing. like it feels like none of them are. I'm like, you, not for nothing, you dudes are riding on this thing right now. You don't think it's going to work? Why are you even on board? But it's almost like, do you think they're really questioning the weapon? Or is it just because he doesn't much care for Krennic?
Um, it's such an interesting dynamic when you think of the Empire, because I think in some ways, um, the Death Star is a very megalomaniacal, you know, mustache twirling supervillain thing to do, to create this big space station to now float around and destroy all the planets when you already have everybody under your thumb. And
Yeah.
so Target might be thinking like, why do we need this big gaudy weapon when we basically have destroyed the rebels at every turn? We've won.
Yeah. We run everything. Why do we need to blow stuff up too? It's kind of like we already have the most powerful military in the world. Why do we keep stockpiling weapons? That kind of thing.
Yeah, the Death Star is absolutely punching down. It's absolutely punching down. Like you've
Right.
already beaten the competition into submission, and it's like, nope, that's not enough. Let's now kill them.
Because, man, if you're not a rebel at this point, you're looking at the Death Star going, what do you want from me? I have no money. I barely have any food. I'm on a dirt poor planet. Me and my whole family, we got nothing. What more do you want from me? I can't give anything else. You're going to tax me now? What's the plan? Like,
Yeah.
it's crazy, man.
And I mean, you could put it in these terms. The Empire seemed very much like an intimate threat in some ways before that. Yes, their goal was always galactic conquest. But in the prequels, their conflict is very much with the Jedis. When you do something like create the Death Star and you start destroying the planets, then you make them a threat to everyone. I mean, they already were a threat to everybody, but you just legitimize them as a threat to everybody.
Yeah. God, it does feel highly unnecessary, this planet or this space station. If you really put it in those terms and really consider it, why did they? I don't know, man. It feels kind of,
They've already subjugated everyone. So,
yeah.
I don't know.
They've won. They basically have won. I mean, at the end of the day, I guess you could play devil's advocate and say, well, they would never built this thing had the Rebel Alliance not gotten to the size that it is now with as many sympathizers as they have. And these people keep finding a way to screw around and screw us up. Maybe that's the reason.
I mean, you can look at it as the Death Star is a way to keep power that they've already gotten. Like the Death Star is just that last nail of going like, no, you guys have no hope. Like you guys cannot win.
Right. Yeah. No kidding. And if you thought maybe you had a chance, check out this thing. Yeah, it's holy God. And by the way, if you don't know how serious they are, go years later, Starkiller Base is like 10 times the size of this monstrosity. So, yeah, that's another show another time. Go listen to it. So, this is the first chance we get to see Jeddah. Another desert planet. It's okay. We see a Star Destroyer is there. And Phil, when I say a Star Destroyer there, I mean a Star Destroyer is really there. It's like basically there. Just there in the sky. And I'm thinking, I've never seen a Star Destroyer this close to a planet ever. Like, and I guess that Saw Gerrera is such a threat that they have to have a Star Destroyer there because the comment is made Saw has been attacking cargo shipments and the Empire is removing kyber crystals, which we'll come to find out in Star Wars lore, kids. If you don't know what kyber crystals are, they power the lightsabers. And these things have been used as plot devices before and story elements before, plot points, I should say. But apparently, Phil, these kyber crystals are some magical rocks, man. Like not since the Infinity Stones have we seen rocks that mean so much to people that these things power the freaking Death Star.
Oh,
Crazy.
Yeah, I did think that was an interesting thing when we watched it because I don't know if we ever knew that, right?
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I thought that was a great touch to use the kyber crystals for that.
Yeah. Funny moment here. Jen calls K2SO target practice. Like just calls him target practice, which is good. She wants to leave K2 behind. She says, half the people here want to reprogram you. The other half want to put a hole in your head. And K2 says, I'm surprised you're so concerned with my safety. She says, I'm not. I'm just worried they might miss you and hit. No, okay. So I'm getting my lines backwards here. So apparently he says, I'm just worried they might miss you and hit me. Doesn't sound so bad to me. So these two don't like each other right off the bat. This moment's going to play back later in the movie in a really cool moment of like we don't know what's going on kind of moment, but it's really cool how it plays out. Tom Clark 6M Podcast is sponsored in part by Radius Law Group. Every day, Radius helps individuals, families, small businesses, and nonprofit organizations throughout North Carolina, Florida, and Pennsylvania resolve their legal issues by providing effective legal counsel in the areas of estate planning, as well as elder law and Medicaid. Radius Law holds the radical belief that working with a lawyer can indeed be enjoyable. So give them a call at 1-800-519-5667 for more information and tell them that Tom Clark 6M Podcast sent you. We're going to meet Bor Gullet. It's the big, Job of the Hutt looking thing. It's not a hut. It's a gullet. I guess is the creature. I don't know. If I had to pick, hey, Tom, name an unnecessary moment in this movie, it would probably be Borgullet. Supposedly this thing touches you, can read your thoughts, knows your emotions, knows what's in your head. One tiny little side effect, you lose your mind. That's what we need, is this Imperial defector to not be able to put two words together when this thing's done with him. Did this moment take you out of the movie at all? Or were you okay with it? Or what's your take on it?
I don't think it took me out of the movie. I do think that was a bit unnecessary. It was a excuse to put like one of these Star Wars-esque creatures in this thing. Yeah, I don't feel like it took anything away from the movie, but it definitely felt like, why do we need this?
Yeah. Yeah, why is this happening? The marketplace that we see next, very reminiscent of the Star Wars movies in the past. One of the coolest moments, and it's only here because it's here, and for no other reason than to just make you go, oh my God, I know those two guys. Jen physically bumps into the two hoodlums, the two hooligans, the two ne'er-do-wells. How often do they do well? Ne'er is how often. From episode 4. And here's their names, Phil, because I bet you didn't know. Dr. Cornelius Evazan and Ponda Baba. Ponda Baba. Okay? And the first thing out of the dude's mouth is, you just watch yourself. The same crap he says in episode 4. I have to say, I love this. Again, it's unnecessary. But as an OG Star Wars guy, I pop for this. I love this little moment. Can't help it.
Yeah, I thought it was a great callback.
And the names are great. Dr. Cornelius Evazan. What is the doctor? Does this mean he went to like space medical school to get his degree? I'm just curious. What's his degree in, I wonder? Like, I don't know the answer to that. But man, they're just looking for a fight. The one, you just watch yourself. Because if you're an OG fan, you know that that's followed by, we're wanted men. I have the death sentence on 12 systems. I'll be careful. You'll be dead. And then, of course, it all goes downhill from there. There's a great Family Guy, I think it's Family Guy, that's translating what the other guy is saying, where he's like, look, we don't want any trouble. You know, we're nice guys. And they don't know what he's saying, so they kill him anyway. It's like, that's good stuff. So there's an image of Rook going throughout the city. The Empire is blasting his face to everybody. A reward of 600 credits, which is apparently pretty generous for this time frame, to anyone with info. And one of the first lines that is repeated in this movie, Cassian Andor tells Jen that rebellions are built on hope. Now, one line I'll hit you with right now that we saw in the trailer that we didn't get in the movie was when the rebels pick her up and she's speaking to Mon Mothma and she goes, I'm a, what, like you're rebels, or I'm a rebel, I rebel. That's not in the film. Did you realize that was cut out? It was never even in the film at all. Remember that from the trailer?
I don't know if I ever noticed that.
Yeah, it's not in the movie because, like, I remember the scene where it was supposed to be there and it didn't happen. And I'll get that sometimes with films where I'll see something cool in the trailer and then see it in the theater. I'm like, wait a minute, what happened to that scene? So they left it out. This seems like a pretty deep thing for this battle-hardened rebel fighter who will do anything it takes, but he's still got hope. Again, it's another layer to this character. I thought it was pretty cool. Dude, the next scene is we finally meet Chirrut Imwe. He's blind, but somehow he knows that Jen is wearing a necklace. He asks what she knows about kyber crystals. She and her father told her that they power lightsabers. This is, Phil, where we talk about, or we meet, or we hear about Guardians of the Whills, protection of the Kyber Temple, but there's nothing left to protect now, and they're just causing trouble for everybody, is what Cassian says. The town is ready to blow. And, dude, if Cassian Andor is ready to get out. Because this dude doesn't run from a fight, but man, he's ready to get out of there. And she's like, what's going on? Like, why are we moving so fast? In other words, this town's getting ready to blow. We got to get the heck up out of here. I mean, it's obvious. Dude, when this thing breaks out and the Empire shows up and there's the blaster fire and the gunfight's happening, there's a kid crying in the street. Jen rushes out to save the kid. Dude, this feels like a Mid-Eastern war zone. I mean, you've got the scenery, the sand and everything. Dude, this feels like something out of a out of a like Desert Storm movie or something to that effect. I mean, this feels like real life, even though it's blasters and not machine guns. But man, this is one of the most chaotic yet realistic, I think, shoot 'em ups in a Star Wars movie I think I've ever seen.
Yeah, I just really think the beauty of this movie is how much that it really grounded the Star Wars universe and goes like, this is a war, like this is a horrible war,
Mm.
and Empire is a threat to everybody. They are like this very much lays out to you why this crew would lay their lives on the line to stop them.
Yeah, because they have no mercy. They show no mercy. I mean, they're firing, open firing with children in the street. Yeah, it's not a good scene. I'm not suggesting it's a good scene. I'm just saying it's highly realistic and very scary to watch. But man, it's um, in terms of what we've seen in this universe before. I think it's, for my money, one of the best in terms of the grittiness and the realism of it for sure. And Imperial Walker shows up in the town, so yeah, they mean business. But Jen Urso's holding her own, man. And Cassian Andor is this great little moment where he sits back and he's sort of watching her in action. And she's taking down these guys one by one, which we don't get a lot of her and Saul on screen, but we know that that he raised her. And boy, you can tell that she knows how to fight because, man, she is more than taking care of herself. And the cool moment we referenced earlier was she turns, and because she's just firing anything that looks like an Imperial, she fires on this Imperial droid. And in the movie, I thought, holy crap, she took down K2, man, it's over. And then when this droid falls, K2SO shows up behind it and he says, "Did you know that wasn't me?" And she says, "Of course." And I'm like, "No, she didn't. You could tell she didn't know."
Yeah, yeah, that was a great scene. But yeah, all this stuff here, it's just like, I'm telling you, this movie did a great job of creating palpable tension from the very first scene. And
Mhm.
the entire movie has this kind of cloud of impending doom over it. And it makes you think, like, how is this possibly going to end well?
Yeah, because one thing we know for sure, Phil, the names of these characters are never mentioned in any Star Wars movie, which further tells you this is probably not going to end well. You're right. It's no happy ending for anybody here, except for the Rebel Alliance, of course. A great little exchange between Andor and K2, excuse me. I thought I told you to stay on the ship. You did, but I thought it was boring and you were in trouble. Like, what? That's so good. Oh man. He says there were a lot of explosions for two people blending in. And then they like the gunfight keeps happening. He's like, "You're right. I should just wait on the ship." So he just leaves. He's like, "Well, crap. I'm not getting what I want out here. I'm just going to go back to the ship." They get around the corner and are confronted by stormtroopers. They ask K2SO where he's taking them, and he says, "I'm taking the prisoners to imprison them in prison." It's great. Cassian tries to speak. Ezo slaps the taste out of his mouth, and he says, "And there's a fresh one if you mouth off again." Dude, I'm here for that line. I love it so much. The trooper tells the others to take them away and for Esso to stay so they can check his diagnostics. Emwe shows up. Let them pass in peace. The Force is with me, and I am with the Force, and I fear nothing, for all this is as the Force wills it. The troops tell him to stop. He said he's blind. Is he dead or is he deaf? He can hear everything. He dodges every blaster shot and attacks him with nothing but a stick. We get to see Donnie Yen do Donnie Yen stuff, and it's so cool. And Baze Malbus comes out to help him. Very cool moment. And again, dude, I think this movie does extremely well also to the point of you get in a very small amount of time, with the amount of time they had to tell the story, you get to get a taste of what these characters are capable of. We saw Jen take down these troopers one by one by one, and without being told a big lengthy story among three movies that she can fight, we see it. And then we see that Imwe, holy God, can do things that dude with vision can't do. And then we see what Malbus can do. Man, it's like the old literary point of, don't tell, show. show them doing this. Don't tell. It's good stuff.
Yes. I've seen some people Photoshop a lightsaber into Giroux's hand and go, man, he would
Mm,
have been so much cooler if he actually had a lightsaber. But I think the fact that he only had a stick is a part of why um, this movie is just so compelling and why it's so effective in what it's trying to do. Um,
mhm,
if he had a lightsaber, he could have more than held his own. He would have been more of a threat to the Empire at that point. Um,
mhm.
the fact that we don't see a lightsaber in play until Obi-Wan does it in New Hope is part of kind of the point. It's like we were saying earlier with the Rebels. They didn't have anything to go on. There was only one guy in the galaxy that still had a lightsaber that could stand against the Empire, and he was in hiding.
Well, we see Vader with it at the end.
Well, I mean, yeah, of course. I mean, just we only see one person with a lightsaber that's on the good side.
Besides
Um,
Vader, yeah. And plus, dude, to your point, to piggyback on that, the fact that Emily doesn't have one, and so when we see Vader's saber light up in the darkness, doesn't that make it all the more special when he lights his up?
Yes, and I think that again, it just makes it just shows you just how much the rebels are outgunned.
Mm.
Um, if you've got a guy on your side that is a fully formed Jedi and has a lightsaber, then you don't get this sense of hopelessness that the movie is trying to set up.
Yeah. Yeah. That's very impactful moments, man. It's, dude, it's so refreshing to review a Star Wars movie where it feels like things happen for a reason and it's going somewhere and we know where it's going. And I haven't got that great feeling since the original trilogy. That even with the movies that I enjoyed, I'm left going, wait a minute, what about? I'll just forget about it and then just finish watching the movie. But like this one does such a great job of connecting the dots all the way through.
Yeah, I agree.
That's good stuff. So, when all this sort of quietens down, Cassian asks Balbus if Imwe is a Jedi. He says there are no Jedi here anymore, only dreamers like this fool. He says, the Force did protect me. He says, I protected you, which is a great back and forth. Like, you moron, I'm the one doing this. I'm helping. I'm the one watching your back. Saw Gerrera's men shows up. Imwe gets a hood put on his head, and he says, are you kidding me? I'm blind. Like, that's such a great moment, dude. When the humor's in this movie, it's used in the right moments, and it's never too much, which was my complaint with Poe's humor in The Force Awakens. I felt was a little too much from the jump. But I never felt like that at all in this movie. I thought it was perfect timing on every bit of humor that plays out in this film.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it's just enough humor to stop this from being such a dark movie. I mean, it's already very dark,
Yes.
but I feel like the humor is absolutely needed in some scenes. It's absolutely a palate cleanser at times.
Yeah. So Saw Gerrera's men, Jen and the others are taken to him, and her hood's taken off, and she's put in there with him, and he's smiling. It's like a grandfather seeing his granddaughter for the first time in a while, and he sees that she's not smiling. He's like, "Are we not still friends?" Like he legit doesn't know she's mad, which is so good. I love that so much when he says that to her. And it turns out he gave her a knife and a blaster and left her in a bunker. And he's like, "Well, I knew you were safe." She's like, I was 16, you dumped me." And so basically, she says she was an Imperial science officer, and people were starting to know that, is what he says. And people wanted to use her as a hostage. And dude, his reason for letting her down or letting her go the way he did makes perfect sense to me. I mean, it makes sense that he's not only trying to protect his army, he's trying to protect her as well. I mean, she would be more of a target, not just on his back, but plus he cares about her. He doesn't want to see her get hurt either.
Yeah, I mean, man, the way they set up the relationships in this movie is just so good, and they do it so quickly, and we care about these characters kind of in a blink of an eye.
Yeah, no kidding. Um, yeah, they have to resolve their resolve their conflicts pretty freaking fast. Um, Yeah, but I love this story between these two. I just think it's so good, and I think the way it plays out is great. So yeah, I'm here for it for sure. So basically, what we're getting at is Saul thinks this is a trap, and dude, this moment with Forrest Whitaker when they're talking, and he says, "Did they send you? Did you come here to kill me?" And dude, he says this line as if the paranoia has officially taken over, and he's now being led to believe that the one that he cared about, that he raised as a child, man, this to me reeks of I've been at war for a really long time. I can't trust anyone. But oh no, they didn't send you to kill me, did they? Like, dude, this is a heartbreaking moment, man, for this guy. Cause like, yeah, this hit me in a weird way when it happened, man. I'm not even sure why. I guess it's just the way he delivered the line. But like, I'm glad it didn't escalate to where she had to start denying that she was there to hurt him, and then it would get all weird. But he had to question, like, "Are you here to kill me?" Like that was kind of a neat little moment, man. I really like that.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. It was very much a stirring moment. Like, man, he's been through hell and back, and it's just like I have to imagine he think at some point someone's gonna show up to kill him, and to for him to look and go like it's you.
Yeah. Which, would make sense because who could get that close to him physically? Only she could. Yeah, it makes sense. So, yeah, he thinks it's a trap. I mean, she kind of talks him down because he says, "Did you come here to kill me? There's not much of me left," which is another great line. And basically, she says, "The rebels want my father. They think that you sent a message about a weapon. Um, and they thought that by sending me that you would help them out." But man, Saul doesn't seem to me to be the guy to help anybody at this point except himself. I mean, does he have a personal agenda here, or he just hates the Empire, you think?
I think we are very much getting a character that has again been through the ringer, and so he just hates the Empire. I'm not sure if
Yeah.
it's that he has an agenda; it's just that he really hates the Empire.
Yeah. So Saul asks what she wants, and she says they want an introduction. Now they have it. He says, "You don't care about the cause?" And she says, all it's ever brought me is pain." He says, "So you can stand to look up and see the Imperial flag reign across the galaxy?" She says, "It's not a problem if you don't look up."
Yeah, that was a great line.
Man, she's very much into her own story right now. She doesn't really have a reason to help the rebels or care about what they're doing because of her father, but all that's going to change. So, yeah, it's on the way. The Death Stars arrived, and basically everything hits the fan because holy cow, they decide. Well, actually, Tarkin says we need a statement. Krennic wants to destroy the entire moon. Tarkin says, another great line, "We need a statement, not a manifesto. The target is Jeddah City." As evil as Tarkin is, he's a tactician. He knows better. We don't destroy the entire moon because, dude, like you hear the empires they go through these movies. Like in episode 4, they explain away why the empire boarded this vessel. They have to explain to the Senate. Like they're still answering questions, which is kind of odd since they run everything. But they know if they blow this moon up, there's going to be questions around it. So it's almost like, nah, we'll just blow the city up. But man, they take this thing out. Dude, this is, I believe, well, it's got to be the first time we've seen the Death Star in action from the ground level. Man, this is flat out terrifying how the Death Star does its work. I mean, if you're in the path of this, you are not getting out of this alive. No chance.
Yeah, and I mean, I know I've said this more than once, but I just think that putting the viewers on the ground level and not just seeing it from far away, that like this CG or uh fake planet gets blown up and we just look like, oh well, it's just sci-fi. It's just, fantastical things where he's committing genocide, but we're not actually seeing the people get hurt. And to see it from the ground level just completely changes that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a different perspective. It's from their perspective, from all the worlds that the Empire is destroyed with this weapon. And I don't know if we ever get a. They blew up Alderaan. Um, Starkiller Base took out planets. Was Alderaan the only planet they blew up?
Um,
Maybe it is.
I think so. But even when they destroy Alderaan, it's like they show you very little because it's still trying to be you know a movie that the entire family can go to see. It's not gonna
Very true.
show you people on the ground dying. This very
Yeah.
much was like, no, we want to show you the grim and gritty side of war. We want to get you in the trenches.
And not for nothing, I don't know if this movie's even PG in the 1970s, like late 70s Star Wars era. This movie might be rated R for that fact alone because it is so gritty. Yeah, good point. So, in the midst of all this, kids, we can't forget this because we finally get to see Galen Erso's message, which is freaking great. And basically, the crux of this thing is he knew that Jin was either dead or hidden so well that they would never find her, they meaning the Empire. He knew that if he refused or killed himself, Krennic would realize he wouldn't need him to complete the project. So Galen decided to lie and played the part of the beaten man resigned to the sanctuary of his work. He made himself indispensable, but laid the groundwork for his revenge. He placed a weakness deep in the system, so small they would never find it. He said he had wasted so much time of his life, wasted so much of his life. He's been hurting without her, meaning Jen, and her mother Lyra. He tells her that the weakness is in the reactor module. It's well hidden and unstable. One blast will destroy the entire thing. And when I saw this in the theater, I didn't know any of this going in. I don't like spoilers. I hadn't read any reviews or anything. And I don't know if I said the word bravo, but I was sure thinking it because, man, this has got to be one of the coolest things they've ever retrofit, maybe the best ever of all time. The fact that, oh, that's why it was so easy to destroy because the dude put it there. It's genius, man.
It was absolutely genius. It's emotional, and it adds even more to Luke's victory. It's not just that Luke won and that the rebels won because this random random kid from a desert showed up to save the world. Is that this was all by design, and that all of them worked together to take down Death Star.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, man. Those that came before, yeah, everyone had a hand in it. It's so good. Yeah, it's so good. It's like a massive buffet, and different chefs had different hands in creating different dishes. Yeah, and it's just, oh man, it's good stuff. So yeah, we get Jetaceta getting absolutely destroyed, and Krennic, because he's such a good heel, looks on and says, "Oh, it's beautiful." Like, can this guy be any more of a Nazi than he already is? I don't think he can.
Yeah, just an
It's
all around just horrible, horrible human being.
yeah, yeah. When he gets killed, it's great stuff. Like, yeah, it's okay to celebrate fictional deaths, kids, especially when they're bad people. So, Saul decides to stay behind. He says, "I will run no longer. You must save yourself, save the rebellion, and save the dream." And he takes on. He just takes the oxygen off and everything, and he's looking at this death coming his way. It reminds me of Billy and Predator when he's standing out there and he like smears the paint on his chest and his face, and he knows the Predator's coming. He knows he's going to get killed, but he's like, "Hey, this is a warrior's death, man. This is how I go out. Finally, I get peace, and finally, it's over." I mean, I hated to see him go, but what a grand way to exit, dude. This was perfect for his character, you think?
Yeah, I think it was perfect. I think it was a great way to establish why he was so dangerous, and uh yeah, I don't think that he could have gotten a better send off.
Yeah, I think it's great. Without knowing all of his full backstory, like you said, he got a great send off, and I think it ties up everything with his character for sure. At the result of this thing, it's so funny because on the bridge of the Death Star, no one's really celebrating or high fiving or fist bumping or chest thumping or whatever. They're all just kind of looking at each other as if to say, "Holy God, did we just do that?" And Krennic's got this real smug look on his face, like, "Yep, you're welcome. I made this happen." Tarkin says, "I owe you an apology. Your work exceeds all expectations." And he says, will you tell the Emperor as much? I will tell him, and even his compliments feel are backhanded. I will tell him his patience with your misadventures is being rewarded with a weapon that will bring a swift end to the rebellion. And then he informs him, I will be taking control of the weapon I first spoke of years ago, effective immediately. And man, Krennic goes off. We've never seen anyone go off on Tarkin. And he screams, we stand here amidst my achievement, not yours. And Tarkin says, I'm afraid the recent security breaches have laid bare your inadequacies as a military director. Whoever wrote Tarkin's dialogue is great. For the record, this is exactly what Tarkin would say. The cold, analytical, imperial governor is, it's a thing of beauty. It's Shakespeare, what I'm reading here. Krennic says the breaches have been filled. Jeddah has been silenced. And he says, you think the pilot acted alone? You could have followed that up with moron. Because that's basically what he's saying. You think the pilot acted alone? He was dispatched from Edu, Galen's Kyber and Edu, folks, is Galen Erso's Kyber refining facility. And then he puts it all together. So we know that, yeah, Galen and Rook are linked. So Cassian Andor gets this coded message from the rebellion. He's told to proceed and kill Galen Erso as ordered. Now that we've seen the holographic image, Phil, and we know this guy's fully fleshed out story, I mean, the problem we discover here, she's the only one who saw it.
Yeah.
So, dude, I know the city's getting blown up. How did you not grab this thing? I don't know.
The great thing about that Tarkin and Tarkin exchange is that it solidifies why he could stand among Vader, because it's just like, you fool, you think that this is your victory? You're a cog. You don't realize it, but
yes.
You are a cog.
Yeah, being manipulated. This is the Empire. You don't know how we do things? Yeah. It very much reminded me of the Mirror Mirror episode of Star Trek for some weird reason, where it's like, if you want power, you got to like kill this guy to get it, and like it's every man for himself.
No,
and Krennic it feels like Krennic's playing that game, but they don't play that game. They're like, no, we're in charge. You're not.
exactly. And I mean, it also gives you reason why people would defect from the Empire, because there is no there is no moving up, right? There's no grand conquest to being a part of the Empire. You're not going to move up and be in this great position and be taken care of. No, you're in service of a bunch of evil dudes that would just as quickly kill you to get what they want.
Yeah. No future in it. I'm guessing their dental's not good. 401k is not great. I mean, it's.
I mean, hey, you get fantastic military uniforms and capes, apparently.
Yeah, and like pressed, a lot of starch in the Empire, man. I want to see the laundry rooms. We've seen the trash compactors. We've seen where they throw the trash out. But yeah, I want to see the laundry room. I want to see how that operation works. Little known fact of the Death Star. Little known room I want to check out.
Yeah,
so.
just a big room with like these long aisles full of steam press.
Yes. We'll have to look our best for the Empire. Yeah, got the little black hats and stuff. Yeah, that's good stuff. So, so he gets the message and he keeps it to himself. Obviously, no one knows what's going on. Rook and Erso talk. Jen says there's a way to defeat the Death Star. Basically, she's telling them what the message said, that Galen is rigged a trap inside. Andor asks, where's the message? And did you bring it? Have you got it? She says, no, everything happens so fast. And of course, Cassian is not believing her. She says, we have to send an army to Scarif to get the plans. And he says, we're in the heart of Imperial country. I can't risk saying that. We should mention, kids, that Cassian Andor is a captain. We all know that the Rebel Alliance throws around military ranks as if they're nothing. You get a general rank just by the sake of one guy calling you general, and that's how you're a general. So we should be so lucky. I think I'm just going to start calling myself captain. "Oh, Captain, my Captain" would suit me just fine. But I digress here. So yeah, we're going to go to another sort of not a desert planet, but a sandy planet. It's a beach planet. Hey, we finally get a beach planet, Phil. It took us freaking long enough to get a beach planet. So we got one called Scarif. So we've got some friction with these two. And Krennic is on his way to Edu, where he knows that Galen is. And the ship crash lands, and Andor wants to go see what they're up against. The rebels can't get a response because they can't contact the ship, so they decide to send a squadron to Edu. And this is where we start to figure out, or they start to figure out, that Cassian's maybe got another agenda. Emway tells Jen that the Force moves darkly around someone who's about to kill. And then K2 says his weapon was in the sniper configuration, which we've never heard in a Star Wars movie, ever. And so Jen goes running out because she figures he's going to kill my dad, right? He's going to kill my father. So Emway and Malbus decide to go after her. And then Andor gets Galen in his sights. And man, he had some opportunities here to take him down. But when Krennic shows up, and then everything starts going south, and he interrogates them, and Galen admits it was him, and all this stuff. Again, Phil, he can't hear any dialogue. He's not being told. He's watching and looking at body language, reactions, facials, everything, the whole nine. He figures out for himself what's going on without having heard a word. I mean, I think it's important that he sees this guy's motivations, not just hears him saying something. I don't know if the 3D image would have convinced Cassian of anything. He's one of those I had to see it to believe it kind of guys. I think that plays out in this scene pretty well.
Yeah, it does. Man, oh, there's so many parts going into second and third act where all the emotional bits just hit.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like it kind of starts with Saw's death, and it just kind of continues to snowball after that.
Everything's starting to, as we said earlier, connect. They're connecting the dots throughout the course of the story, which I love so much. They're making everything mean something. Again, which is really nice. So we know the rebels are coming by this point. Cassian knows as well, but he tells K2SO to tell the rebels to hold off because Jen is on the platform. He sees Jen sneaking up, but it's too late because they fire on the platform. And essentially, Phil, without meaning to, they've essentially killed Galen here because this causes everything to go south. I mean, if the timing had been different, if the rebels had showed up 30 seconds after this, I mean, what would have been Cassian's move? I mean, his blaster was in sniper fire configuration. Would he have just taken all of them out before they could see where he was? And I mean, could he have saved Galen? Was there enough time, you think, to even do anything like that?
Yeah, I don't know, man. I just think that, creating enough tension to get us to believe that maybe he would have taken a shot and killed Galen, possibly, because he just, for the greater good, he would have thought that's what he had to do. Yeah, I don't know.
It's interesting to ponder. It's one of those what ifs of this story. Had the timing been just a little bit differently, and the rebels meant well, but it's like they, dude, as we said, there's good and bad here for sure. But it's like, do we come in with guns hot, or do we come in and fire around them? Do we, warning shots? I mean, what are we doing? But like, they're going for the throat the second they get there. At least Jen does get to have a face to face with her father, but it's like the very end. He calls her Stardust again. And, all this is happening. But it's like, dude, when this happens, and again, the rebels are responsible for him, why not have Krennic's character kill Galen here? Would that have changed anything? Does it make more sense that it was one of those, it just happened moments? Or, his death still meant something, obviously. But how does it change if Krennic actually shot him in cold blood?
I don't know if it added anything because at this point we get that Krennic is a bad guy. I think giving him the final shot, I don't know if it adds any more to that. I think we already know he's a bad guy. But I think
Mhm.
seeing Galen die as a casualty of war, not just a casualty of the Empire, just a casualty of war, I think it's a bigger statement of what this movie means.
Right. Yeah, and it's getting down to the wire here, folks. I mean, as we're getting near the climax of this movie, and man, what a climax it is! Because basically, uh, uh, we see Jen and we see that Cassian grabs her, and Galen is dying. And Galen's last words, not for nothing, interesting choice of last words. He basically says, "Look at you, I have so much to tell you," and then he dies, which is kind of an odd way to go. Not like I'm proud of you or be careful or I love you, but it's like I have so much to tell you. It kind of felt more real, if I'm being honest with you.
It does, and I feel like it is the entire theme of this movie of always leaving us wanting more. Like we want to see after keeping these characters apart for the entire movie, we want him to live and we want them to have a relationship and we
Right.
want him to be able to tell her everything he's gone through, but then he's just gone. And that's kind of the movie.
Yeah. God, the horrors of war could have been the subtitle of this film. Man, so much. So right about that. We get some serious confrontations here, folks. When they're all back on the ship, they're leaving Edu. They've all made it out safely. She's irate. She's upset. She knows. Basically, tells Cassian, "I know you're there to kill my father, and that you lied about the whole thing." He says, "Hey, I had every chance to pull the trigger, and I didn't." She says, "You might as well have. Those were Alliance bombs that killed him." He says, "I had orders I disobeyed." And dude, for the first time, Jen is put on notice. She's put, on the spot, so to speak. And he tells her, "I had orders I disobeyed. You wouldn't understand that." And she says, "Orders? When you know they're wrong, you might as well be a stormtrooper." He says, "What do you know? We don't all have the luxury of deciding when and where we want to care about something. Suddenly the rebellion is real for you. Some of us live it. I've been in this fight since I was 6 years old. You're not the only one who lost everything. Some of us just decided to do something about it. You can't talk your way around this," she says. He says, "I don't have to." Man, what a great freaking exchange this was. Because again, Phil, without him saying, "Here's my story. As a child, this happened," he didn't need to say any of that. Because basically, he told her in one sentence, "I've been doing this my whole life. You just got here, and now you decide to do something because your dad's dead." I mean, dude, this is a great little exchange between these two, man.
No, yeah, this is really, really great. I think this is a great exchange because it tells you everything about um, who who he is as a character, and not just what his motives are, but just because like I said, when we first see him, and he already has like what you would assume is the Han archetype, and then he he turns out to be not Han at all. Um,
Mm,
and we kind of get an idea in this exchange why that is.
yeah, for sure. And it makes perfect sense, and I love it. It adds such texture to his character. You know what? The more I talk about this guy, the more I'm actually anxious to see this new Andor series. It's probably going to be pretty good, man. So I think I talked myself into it. So I was going to probably check it out anyway, if I'm being honest with you. So they're heading back to Yavin 4. Now, dude, we finally get to see Vader. We see Krennic's ship. He's going to meet with him. Vader is in a chamber filled with water. And, it's something that's, I think we got that moment. We didn't get a New Hope, but we got Empire, I believe, when you saw the back of his head and the helmet being lowered onto him. But man, we get the familiar Imperial March, Vader's music playing in the background. He comes right up to Krennic. When Vader walks into a room, he owns it. Okay? No one's better than him. He knows it. And dude, when he walks way up on Ben Mendelsohn, he's staring at him, and then suddenly he kind of looks off to the side like, holy crap, he's here, he's here. Dude, that was one of the best little moments of intimidation I've seen in this entire movie. What a great moment to introduce, hey kids, Darth Vader. So good, man. I love this. Such a cool
Man,
moment.
I there's so many great things about this. When we first see him, and he is putting on armor and he's getting out of that. I don't remember what that pool of stuff he's sitting in, and it's just kind of like I have to get involved now. And you can very much feel that he doesn't ever say that, but that is the feel of it. Like, I got to get involved now. And so when he gets involved, and you see how intimidating it is, you see that it's very much a place of anger. Like, now, if I have to get involved, then I don't want to talk about it. Why aren't you doing your job?
It's good stuff. It's like, man, I'm taking a bath. I'm relaxing. I'm in the sauna. And I gotta stop.
It's so many things visually about it, because I don't think we really got an idea that we were going to see Vader at first. It's kind of a surprise that we see Vader, and just visually seeing his twisted body getting out of the pool and then putting the armor on, it's so terrifying.
Dude, you couldn't have done this movie without Vader, could you? I mean, I don't think it's possible.
Yeah, because I mean, again, you just keep escalating why the Empire is a threat to everybody and why it just seems so hopeless, because we've seen them go through so many things and we've seen everything that Empire's thrown at them, and then you kind of forget at the end of the day, oh yeah, they've got one of the most powerful Siths waiting in the wings as the main final boss.
Right. Yeah, well, listen, if this planet-killing star, this battle station you guys built, not good enough, all these weapons and AT-ATs and TIE fighters, hey, you got me. I'll just come in and play cleanup. Let's do cleanup batter. I mean, yeah. As if they don't have enough, they got that guy too. That's like, it's an ace in the hole, man. The helmet and the uniform are perfect because the helmet's not shiny and the eyes are red. Because the uniform changed very subtly between the original trilogy. He didn't have those red lenses in Empire. Only had them in Episode 4, I believe. They mimicked it here, which is very cool because this movie leads in. Now, obviously, James Earl Jones is much older now, so the voice is not going to exactly match, but it doesn't matter because he's awesome. And Krennic argues that he like, I delivered the weapon. He wants to meet with the Emperor. He wants an audience to make certain the Emperor understands his potential. Like, okay, let's say he gets this meeting. Hey, Emperor, what's up? Krennic here. Listen, this thing, you know how dangerous this thing is? I built you a good one. I mean, what's the plan for this guy to get in front of the Emperor? That couldn't have ended well if he did manage to do it.
Yeah, I kind of wonder, what is the aim? Do you think you're going to get all of these riches and this status for doing that now? No, there's no there's no light at the
There's
end
no
of the tunnel.
promotion.
There's no promotion. There is no door prize over here for you. No, it's just you are a piece of a machine. You're a means to an end to us.
Yeah. Like you said, you're a cog. You're a spoke in the wheel. Evil Empire. Yeah. All kinds of stuff we could talk about there. But yeah, and Vader says its power to create problems has certainly been confirmed. So even Vader, Phil, is not sold on this whole Death Star debacle. I would love to have seen the movie before this one, where the problems of getting this thing built, and I guess it all links back to Galen stringing them along for years, not finishing the freaking thing because he didn't want to finish it. So he knew if he dragged his heels, like he couldn't figure it out, or it took time to create. That's why everyone's upset, because they wanted this thing yesterday, which again, all goes back to the original plot points of Galen Erso in this movie.
Yeah.
Dude, I've said connect the dots a bunch, but this connects also. Because they're all blaming Krennic for it, not Galen, because Krennic's the guy in front of them.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, there's so many cool things when you really think about what the Death Star represents. I mean, like we stated earlier, it's kind of like this final nail in a coffin for the Empire to go, no, you cannot win. And in some ways, it ended up being their biggest failing, because they set up this big win for the rebels to get, and then when the rebels got it, it gave them all hope, and it gave them a reason to continue to fight. And it gave them their biggest public win over the Empire. Man, if if the Death Star doesn't exist, that doesn't happen.
Yeah, you're right. Totally. Yeah, no kidding. I mean, the Empire's kind of responsible for shooting themselves in the foot in a lot of these situations. They kind of do it to themselves.
Yeah, I
Like,
mean, yeah, you could make a strong case that their greed for power and their need to be as menacing as possible ended up being their Achilles heel.
yeah. Because the stronger they got, the more they convinced people to mobilize and to join together to fight them.
Yeah.
It's like the old adage of, I created my enemy. There's no Joker without Batman, right? So, yeah, you created your own enemy for God's sake, whether you meant to or not. Vader comes back at him with a city's been destroyed, and a city destroyed, an Imperial facility openly attacked, as if that's a crime. He tells Vader, this is a great line. He says, the test was Tarkin's idea. As if to say, hey, man, I didn't want to do that. He leaves out the bit that he wanted to blow the planet up, not just the city.
Yeah.
Which is pretty smooth. But he throws blame on Tarkin. It's so good. Tarkin is like Vader's right hand at this point. That's good stuff.
Sorry. But yeah, this is Starscream. He's trying to politic his way up to the top of the ladder, and it's just not happening.
Yes. God, that comparison is going to ring true with me forever because it's exactly what he is. This thing kind of doesn't end too well for him because Vader decides to do the Force choke, and what's great is we never see him do it. It's just that Krennic suddenly can't breathe, and you're like, uh-oh, I know what this is. And Vader he's got his back turned to him the whole time, which is so cool. Another example of how freaking insanely powerful this guy is. But man, what good stuff this is. And he said, because before this happened, he tells him the Senate was informed that Jeddah City was destroyed in a mining disaster. Again, Phil, they're having to explain their actions to the Senate, which is all kinds of weird because I guess the Senate's still in power and still running things, supposedly. But he tells him this, and Krennic says, so I'm still in command? And then he drops, he's choking. And Vader says, be careful not to choke on your aspirations, Director.
Such a great line.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
Yeah, I did think bringing up the Senate again and letting you know the Senate still exists, and basically saying that they kind of have the answer to the Senate, but the Senate is useless because the Emperor has basically rendered them useless.
Yeah, it's such an odd dichotomy we've got going on here. So much politics, but it's been like that since the very beginning of Star Wars. So nothing's really changed. It just plays out on a different scale than what we are accustomed to seeing. This is the scene we mentioned earlier in the pod here about the rebels arguing back and forth. It very much reminded me of the Patriot when they're arguing about whether or not they should fight the British and everything, and some of them don't want to do it. They think it's a bad idea. They don't, they're either scared or they don't want to put themselves out there. And some of the rebels flat out say, we shouldn't be doing this. We get to see Bail Organa, Leia's adopted father, which Jimmy Smits has shown up in the Star Wars movies before. So good. And he's another link to the rest of the film universe here. And he says we shouldn't disband. We've only now just managed to gather our forces. Everyone scoffs at that. And one of these guys says it's simple. The Empire has the means of mass destruction. The Alliance does not. We meet Admiral Raddus, who has got to be Admiral Akbar's relative to some degree. I didn't do my homework on that, but he's got to be. Okay, you just want to like the guy because he's, he looks awesome and he's got a great voice and he's a rebel, for God's sake. Jyn is the one of all of them, Phil, these battle-hardened warriors who's got to try to talk some sense into him. This kid, a babe in the woods, right? Jyn is talking sense into them. And she says, the time to fight is now. You got to send troops to Scarif. You need to capture the Death Star plans. And he says, you're asking us to invade an Imperial installation based on nothing but hope. And she delivers Cassian's line, rebellions are built on hope. And when Mon Mothma says, we're not going, we need the full support from the council, and it's not there, I'm like, are you kidding me? But we don't get the title of the movie, Phil, Rogue One, without them going off on their own. Isn't it more of a bigger deal that this thing was undertaken by a small band of fighters than it was by the entire Rebel fleet?
Yes, yes. But again, it shows how much it just shows how much the Emperor's plan worked, because everyone was displaced. Everybody was kind of trying to figure it out as they went. And
Yes.
there was leadership in place, but the leadership for the rebels was lost basically. There was no unity.
Yeah, for sure. And it's, again, the idea of the Rogue Squadron. I mean, dude, if nothing else, this thing inspired the rest of the Alliance to get over their minor beefs with each other and say, listen, if we're actually going to do this, we've got to stick to it. I mean, it's this cutting and running and hiding and picking our fight for another day. You got to go now, man. There's no tomorrow with these guys. You got to go right now. So if nothing else, this inspired the rest of them to get moving. They take a stolen Imperial ship and they're going to Scarif, but it's being run by the Empire. And so there's a protective shield around that planet, which comes into heavy play later on. So to get through there, they've got to give the clearance, and they ask the cargo ship, what's your call sign? The dispatcher says, in fact, before they can even leave Yavin 4, they're like, you can't take that ship. What are you doing? What's your call sign? And Bodhi says, it's Rogue One. Because it's like perfect. Because again, this is Rogue Squadron. Bail Organa is returning to Alderaan. He tells her. And then Mon Mothma she asks about his Jedi friend. You'll need someone you can trust. And he says, I trust her with my life. So we know about Leia. So we know that Leia is probably going to play a role in this at some point. They get there. They give the clearance code, as we said before. They get inside the shield on Edu. It's all good. So, Phil, we're leading up to the climax of this movie. A lot of stuff to get into here, but just as a general overview of what we're talking about here, this is where everything goes down. The plans are in the Citadel Tower. You got to get up to the top of the tower to get the plans. We see characters meet their end one by one by one. K2SO meets his end. And, dude, this is the part of the Western when, The Magnificent Seven is such a great film, and 3 of the 7 lived. The other 4 do not make it. I still maintain that maybe all of them should have died. Could have saved us for some really weak sequels. And the movie is so good, but like the characters you kind of fall in love with along the way are dying in front of you, and it sucks, but it is what it is. But man, this movie, it's not Magnificent Seven because no one makes it out alive. Is this like the best climax of a Star Wars movie? If it's not the best, where do you rank it, man?
I definitely think it's one of the best third acts, and just how well it was paced, and just how well the tension that was there throughout the entire movie just built up. It was almost like a ticking time bomb. And so when you get to the end of the movie and you see that everybody is just dropping like flies, it's like like I said, in some ways it's very satisfying to watch on it as a fan of storytelling. But boy, as someone that got attached to these characters and watching them just all die, it was just heartbreaking.
Yeah. Yeah, it sucks, man. And it occurs to me, as they get on Scarif and you've got Bodhi, Rook in the ship, and these guys, I swear these guys are wearing actual American military helmets. And it looks like they're jumping onto the desert. And it gets real. Again, take out the blasters and the space stuff and the X-Wings and all that. And, dude, this straight up feels like what George Lucas envisioned, where it's dogfights in the air, it's old army movies and war movies. And actual aerial assaults, and it's like soldiers on the ground gutting it out. And man, war movie. This is definitely a war. This is definitely a war picture. Like we get all that playing out here in grand fashion. I think it drives the points home. A lot of stuff to talk about here, Phil. Red 5 goes down, opening the door for Luke Skywalker later. Um, yeah, Blue Leader goes down. We see a lot of their ranking officers go down. So by the time we get to episode 4, which is hours away at this point, I mean, the Rebel Alliance is gutted. At least their front line is. Man, lots of stuff to unpack here, man. The Red 5 thing is pretty cool, actually, because it does open the door for Luke. I mean, we do see a different kind of stormtrooper outfit. We see a lot during the course of these movies, man, but it's sort of a sand trooper, I guess. Got the brown and the khaki, it looks like. I mean, they managed to throw different stuff in here without making it look too awful high tech. What about the Citadel Tower and having to get these plans? I mean, they got to make it as hard as possible. And it is a callback to when they're on the Death Star in episode 4 and Ben is up high above and he's shutting off the tractor beam. It kind of reminded me of that. But talk about this scene, man, where they're having to climb up there and get these plans. I mean, K2's got their back. He's holding off the stormtroopers. A lot going on here, dude, but he gives his life for this. What, if you can call it life. Man, this is some good stuff, man. I really love this moment actually too.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, having them have to get onto this beach and then get all the way into the Citadel and then get all the way to the top of the Citadel and out. It just seems like how can they possibly do it? That was what I was thinking the whole time.
Yeah, it seems like an impossible task, man. Like it's too much to overcome.
Yeah,
I
definitely.
mean, anything that can go wrong does go wrong here, doesn't it?
Yes, for sure. Yeah, I mean, when they first get in there and people are just dying as soon as they open the door, I'm like, this is insane.
Yeah. It's cool, this cool little moment before the bit about the data plans happens when they dress as Imperials and K2 says, I've got a bad feeling, and they shush him up because it's a line that's been repeated so many times in the Star Wars movies, but they won't let him finish it, which I thought was a really nice touch, actually. That's good stuff. Um, let's see. Let's give some overview of what's happening here. The rebels are setting the charges. They're going to blow the base. Krennic shows up, wants all of Galen's transmissions. One of the officers balks at that. He's like, I want all of them checked. There's little connections to the original trilogy all through this film, as we said before. There's sound effects. We can hear the droids, the stormtroopers talking amongst themselves, carrying on conversations. And yeah, it's just the moment when I think that they know this is going to get bad. K2 tells them that their optimal route to the data vault places 89 stormtroopers in their path. They'll make it no more than 33% of the way before they are killed. And no one's telling him to shut up when he says it, because it's like they're beginning to realize this. There may be getting no way of getting out of this. I mean, it's if they don't know if it's a suicide mission before now, they're starting to figure out. The rebels start firing on the troopers who are now outside the city or outside the facility. Tarkin is informed that there's a rebel skirmish happening on Scarif. They inform Vader, and they're going to go because, buddy, you know if the Death Star shows up, bad things are going to happen. And they do eventually. The rebels learn of Yavin 4 and of Rogue Squadron's fight, and dude, they decide to go help. And we see out of blue 3PO and R2 show up. We haven't seen them through the whole movie, but Phil, this is another indication that episode 4 is like minutes away at this point because now we've seen the two droids. What do you think about sticking them in here at the last moment?
I just think the way that they brought all of the stuff from the original trilogy into the third act was done really, really well. It never was done in a way that I felt was too fan servicey. It all felt like it was in service of forwarding the story.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. What do you think about the idea of this shield? And it's like it's another friggin' blockade for these guys to accomplishing this mission of sending the transmission of the data tapes of the Death Star plans to the Rebel Alliance. They can't do it with the shield up. And this shield is impossible to bring down. But man, it's like another wrinkle. It's like something else to, as we said, this feels especially impossible now, especially with that shield, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think it's also a way of continuing to ground the conflict. If you could just, transport it or do something, sci-fi to get it off the ground before the Empire could get to you. It's still one of those things where you had to basically physically hand the plans to someone. I just think that grounds everything.
Yeah. Oh man, for sure. And the fact that they've informed Vader on the Death Star, and now the Death Star is coming, that's not going to end well. Um, so Cassian is radioing. Bodhi tells him to contact the rebels, blow a hole in the shield, find a way. Basically telling Bodhi, this is your problem. You're going to have to find a way. Jen finally gives K2 a blaster. He wanted one earlier. She says, you wanted one, right? And K2 tells her, your behavior is continuously unexpected, which is pretty freaking great. I think they kind of bonded here near the end. We see AT-ATs. They're everywhere on the beach. Dude, for me, an AT-AT is flat out Star Wars. It's so cool to see these things here. It makes sense they drop these things and storm the beach with them. I mean, again, fan service just enough, but not enough it distracts you. I mean, I thought the use of hardware and everything they did in this ending sequence is great stuff.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, when you think like the Empire's coming down to like, um, just display power, like you think AT-ATs, you think like big Star Destroyers, and so getting to see them throw everything at this little tiny beach, it was a cool visual.
Yeah, it's like they're throwing everything they can at them. Yeah, I mean, it's again, folks. This is the end of the film here, kids, and it's one by one they're meeting their end. K2 meets his end. Imwe and Malbus both meet theirs. Imwe, it seems like it's fitting for his character, dude. This moment when he has to walk across through the line of fire, it reminded me of the No Man's Land scene in Wonder Woman when she openly walks through No Man's Land and all these shots are going off. But like, dude, he's not getting hit. He's like, I'm one with the force is with me. And he's repeating it over and over and over again. I mean, dude, what a great moment for this character. And he goes out, it's as much of a fitting end for him as it is, I think, for Saw Gerrera. I hated to see the character go, but he went out in grand fashion. And Malbus had his back to the very end. I'm sad that we can't see this character anymore, but dude, what a great way to go for Chirrut Imwe here.
Yeah, I just think having them, having Base hold his own with the big Gatling gun thing, and then Chirrut just taking this, basically a walk of faith. It was so cool, man. Again, I cannot say enough that Chirrut was my favorite character, and so watch him die like that was like, dang. But it still was just such a cool moment.
It's cool because he tells Malbus, it's okay. Look for the Force and you will always find me. And then Malbus starts repeating, I'm one with the Force is with me. And then he gets up, dude, and he is firing on these guys. And he takes shots himself. And it takes like 3 shots to kill him because he's just pumped up, man. Again, I'm old school guy. When Y-Wings show up, I pop for that because I had so many of the original toys when I was growing up, and I had a Y-Wing fighter. It was one of the coolest things I had. I was just in love with this thing. So when they showed up, I popped for that. Seriously. Dude, they managed to take down a Star Destroyer. And it's like they disable the thing, and then they all physically push this thing into the other Star Destroyer. Oh, I'm jumping ahead of myself, but it's such a cool moment, dude. And again, they've got these big, cumbersome ships. It almost feels like they should have just lived and died by the TIE fighter. The idea of a Star Destroyer makes sense, But even with the dreadnoughts and the sequel trilogy, those things were limited by what they could do. So the Empire kept building bigger and badder and better, supposedly, but they had restrictions. And in the end, they just got in their own way. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah,
It's like meant to instill fear, but it was their undoing in the end.
for sure. It was absolutely their need to have this huge, gaudy show of power that was their undoing.
Yeah. Oh, no doubt about it. During this melee, we see Bodhi Rook get killed. He does his job again. Everyone's doing their part to make this thing happen. A grenade is thrown into the shuttle. It blows. He's gone. We talked about Malbus going down. He's the next one to go down. Jen has climbed all the way up. The rebels again. They've pushed the Star Destroyer into the other one, and we know where these things are headed to for sure. Jen inserts the data disk. The antenna's alignment needs to be reset. Of course it does. So she has to go out to the catwalk to do it. We should not leave out the fact that Krennic had tracked her and Cassian down and fired on them and actually hit Cassian. And we think he could be dead because he fell. And we only see Jen at this point. Cassian doesn't show back up for another moment or two. She's being fired upon. She nearly falls. Krennic has her in her sights. In his sights, he says, "Who are you?" Because this whole time he has no clue. She says, "You know who I am. You've lost. My father's revenge. He'll build a flaw in the Death Star. He put a fuse in the machine. And I just told the entire galaxy how to light it." And Krennic said, "You've wasted your time. The shield is up. The Alliance will die." Andor shows up and shoots him. Dude, how surprised were you that Krennic never got back up like Jason Voorhees? I fully expected this guy to get back up at the wrong moment.
Yeah, I kind of did too, but I think it was kind of like another part of just the realism of this movie. It's just so crazy. When you think of the first Star Wars and you think of even how Obi-Wan died, it was like he was dead, but it didn't feel like a graphic death. A lot of these guys in this movie died very violent deaths.
Yeah, big time. Yeah, from the informant in the back alley when Cassian shoots him all the way up to this point. Yeah, you're right. Gritty indeed. So, yeah, they're transmitting the data. Krennic gets shot, and man, the moments coming up here are big time. We know that it's going down. The Star Destroyers are going through the shield. Jen flips the switch, transmits the data. And she wants to bum rush Krennic and like finish the job or kick him in the head or something or put the boots to him, I guess. But Cassian stops her, says he's down or whatever. And then Admiral Raddus, he's told we have the plans, and he says she did it. So now we know it's only a matter of time. And Cassian says to her, "Do you think anyone's listening?" She says, "I do. Someone's out there." And the Death Star arrives, and you're like, "Yep, I know what's coming." And some of the officers are talking to Tarkin. Tarkin says Vader will handle the fleet, target the base on Scarif. Jen and Andor take the elevator back down. Krennic wakes up just long enough to see the Death Star in the sky. And dude, do you think at this point Krennic finally understood he was a pawn this entire time?
I definitely feel like he had his I'm a sucker moment in this. Like you lost, and you lost in pursuit of nothing, basically.
Yeah, and they don't care that you're there, by the way. They don't care. Yeah, he's going to go down with the ship, literally. So the rebels have what they need. Dude, did you find it interesting that they didn't stick around? I mean, could they have done anything? They couldn't have, right? Because the Death Star was there.
Oh no, this was very much a get in and get out thing.
Yeah.
Like they had to get out with whatever they were left with. If they tried to stay and fight, they would have lost more soldiers and more ships.
Yeah. Oh man, what a mess! Because we're taking it home here, folks. So what an end! what an end for Jen Erso and Cassian Andor. They're on the beach. The ocean's there, it's like this beautiful scene. He says, your father would have been proud of you, Jen. And Vader is told that the Rebel flagship is disabled, but has received a transmission. Vader wants a boarding party. We know where that's heading. That's heading to episode 4. The base on Scarif is destroyed. And the moment that I love, I don't think they ever kissed. It never got romantic. It didn't need to. They just embrace, and it's like, this is it. It kind of felt like Watchmen, for me, when like the nuke happens or whatever, and it's like they just embrace and there's nothing left and that everyone's gone. And it's just that moment of this is it. We did what we had to do. Man, what an end it is. And like, there's no coming back for these characters. They're gonna have the Andor series on Disney Plus, obviously, but this is it for Jen Erso. I mean, is there any reason to go back into her story? We've seen everything we needed to see, didn't we?
Yeah, I think out of all the characters, I would be more interested in seeing probably less of Jen. Like, if they wanted to do an entire show on like Chiru, I would be interested, or someone else from the show, because we didn't get their backstory. I feel like we got all of Jen's story here.
Yeah, everything that mattered anyway, right? We know what this is coming to, kids. There's 2 great, big, major, fat moments getting ready to happen here. The hallway scene. This may be as big as the Daredevil hallway fight scene. It's that big. It's that important. The rebels are in the hallway. Vader is there. It's flat out dark, but they hear the breathing. And then the red saber ignites. And you're like, oh my God in heaven, here he goes. They fire on him. He swats them away as if they're nothing. He force pushes. He takes them all down. One by one, he's cutting them in half. They're holding up. They're like handing out the plans like a football, man. They're like running a trick play. They get all the way to the door. The door, they can't get it open. They get the plans through the door to the next guy. And then they launch from the ship. And Vader's watching them fly away like crap. Again, Phil, to your point, he's thinking, oh, I got to go do this myself because everyone that we have working for us sucks and no one can do anything right. Which begs the question, why have all these troops if all you need's him? Maybe that's what Kylo Ren figured out all those years later.
Man.
Maybe he had a point after all.
Listen, when I sat in the theater and watched him walk into that hallway and the lightsaber ignited, it was equally one of the most cool and terrifying things I've ever seen. To watch this man just completely swat all of these guys away like flies, and it made Obi-Wan standing up to him look even cooler. But then at the same time, it just shows just why this guy was the most feared man in the galaxy.
Yeah. And dude, is this the best Darth Vader moment of all the movies?
I think it probably is, because he is just so, he's just ruthless. We get a sense of the guy that essentially didn't toy with Luke at the end of Empire and just basically just beat him. Beat him easily.
Yes.
And could have finished him at any point. But here we just see like why this guy he's the final boss for a reason.
Oh man, big time. It's worth noting here that the ship that we see them fly away in is, of course, the exact ship that we see at the beginning of episode 4, down to the paint job, down to the rust, down to the colors. Everything is absolutely perfect because these guys are so good at what they do, and they've matched it up uniform for uniform, helmet for helmet, chin strap for chin strap, kids. Everything's there. Everything's great. It all matches up. And of course, we get the rebel officer who hands the data tape to someone in a white gown and says, what is it they've sent us? And she says, hope. And this was after Carrie passed. And so, dude, when I watched the film again last night, I got teary-eyed. I couldn't help myself.
When I watched it the first time, I absolutely cried because it was just like everything that they went through to get the plan there, and just to see Carrie at the end of the tunnel, man, it was a great moment.
Oh man, such good stuff. And dude, as I said when we kicked this thing off, I watched the very end of this and then started up episode 4, and it fits. I mean, they've done an exceptional job, down to the sound of the alarm going off in the hallway. It's identical. It's great. I mean, yeah, she looks great. I mean, we know that CG'd with her face and everything. It's an actress there in the form, obviously, but it's CG'd face. I think she looks good. I'm not going to say she looks perfect, but I think for what it needed to do, it did it. And I like that it ended with them just jumping to hyperspace, and that's it. That's it. Because it's meant to end on a hanging note, on a cliffhanger, because the next thing you see is the first scene of episode 4.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, there's something to creating this doom and this hopelessness for the entire movie, and then giving us this one glimmer of hope to end the movie on. And we know what that sparks into, and that sparks into this thing that was a big part of all of our childhoods. um
Mm-hmm.
so it just had all this emotional weight, without having to fabricate it. It was just there. Like, if you're a fan of Star Wars, at the end of the movie, you're like, yes. Like, it just felt like a great moment.
And dude, now when we call episode 4 A New Hope, now it means so much more than it ever did before, doesn't it?
Yes, that's why I think it's very fitting to call Rogue One a prologue, because it does so much to set up the original trilogy, and it adds so much to that first movie. It doesn't. I don't feel like it does it in a way that's just like, ha ha, wink and nod. But it very
Yeah.
much effectively sets up the first movie and all of the victories that the rebels get from then on.
Yeah, no kidding. Oh man, so good, so good. Um, well, kids, there's the film. There is Rogue One. We've done our job. We've done our work of reviewing this sucker. Gave you some subtle nuances. Gave you some stuff that wasn't so subtle. Gushed where we needed to gush. Analyzed where we need to analyze. This is what nerds do, kids. This is what the 6M delivers to you. So you're welcome. Uh, so I loved watching this movie. I think of I have seen the original trilogy. I can't even begin to count. It's impossible at this point in my life. There's no way. It's countless. Probably I don't want to say 1,000 times, but man, it's a lot of times through the course of my life. This is one of those movies out of all these films. Like, how many times have I sat around and watched The Force Awakens? I think I could watch Rogue One multiple times over the course of a week. And you're right, doom and gloom hangs over it, but it's what's coming at the end that you know is making the ride worth it. Like, you don't want to see these characters meet their end, but you know they're all fighting for a bigger cause. I just think it ties together perfect, man. Is this the best job that's been done so far of tying any of these movies not only to what came before but to what comes after it too?
Um, I think this is by far the best out of all of the prequel stuff. I feel like this is the best thing that they've done outside of Lucas. I know some people are very much attached to the Clone Wars show and some of that stuff, but I think this is it. This is the high point. It's this and Mandalorian for sure.
Oh yeah, I love the Mandalorian. And that episode is available in the 6M as well, kids. Go check it out. So as I said, we've done a lot of Star Wars, but it's all good. All right, my man. We'll bring this thing home here. So, um, if we can narrow it down any further than possible, give me your final word on Rogue One.
Uh, Rogue One is a man. It's a great movie going experience. I got the joy of going to go see it in a theater. I believe it was around Christmas time when I saw it, and it just
Hmm.
was a great movie to see in a theater. It's a great movie to revisit for everything that it means to the Star Wars franchise. Man, for my money, it might be possibly the most important prequel.
I couldn't agree more with that, and I hope that there's a time comes sooner rather than later when some of these films will be re-released, because why not, kind of thing. I'd love to see this on a major IMAX screen. I think that'd be pretty freaking sweet. Um, I'm in the back for this movie, kids. I think we've made that abundantly clear. This movie is one that definitely deserves to be rewatched because it's just so good. And kudos to everyone involved. Kudos to the cast. We never mentioned the director, Gareth Edwards. Kudos to him. Nailed it. Never gushed over the director. I don't know why or how that happened, but man, did he do a good job with what he had in front of him. And it's a love letter to the universe without being so on the nose. It did what it had to do, and I think it's a very satisfying first chapter. Yeah, it's everything that it could have been and much more. And I think it fulfills, it delivers, it does everything it needs to do and then some. I couldn't be happier with it. And as Phil said, it's got to be the best prequel thus far, and I'm all in on that for sure. And that is Rogue One. Hey, thanks for listening to the show. Check out our social media on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at 6M Podcast. We'll see you next time.